Chapter 665. The Eastern King had arrived in Gilded City. His powerful aura filled the entire courtyard, causing clouds and mist to swirl around him. He was the head of Jinshi's 4 kings, a late corporeal realm expert. As soon as he appeared, he gave off an indescribably terrifying pressure. Eastern King. Xiang Yuan's expression turned serious. Xiang Yuan Lulua. Dong Wang's gaze swept across the two of them, before turning towards Purple Marquis and saying, "Then you should be Zichuan. Although your appearance has changed quite a bit, you're the only corporeal realm disciples among Master Mo's disciples." Purple Marquis tightened his grip on his sword, his brows furrowed in caution. "Eastern King, why have you personally come?" Lulua put down the medicinal herbs in her hands and calmly stood up. "I've come to take Emo Gate's 9th son away." The Eastern King looked to the east. Lulua narrowed her eyes. "Eastern King, is it Emperor Jinshi's idea to take 9th junior brother away? Or is it your own idea? Is there a difference? However, I can guarantee you that once he leaves with me, the matter with the Northern King will be resolved. No one will be able to do anything to him. Eastern King really is bold. If Emperor Jinshi or the Nether Hall were to take action against 9th junior brother, would you be able to stop them? If you offend your superiors, how would you deal with that?" Lulua calmly asked. "Since I dared to say this, I'm confident I can do it. As for the Emperor, there's no need for you to worry about him. I'll explain myself. Many thanks for your favor, Eastern King. However, I still have many things to do. I don't have this fortune." At this moment, a black-clothed, black-haired figure walked over from the eastern courtyard. Beside Lulua, Iner immediately ran over and hugged his hand when she saw him come out. The Dong King glanced over, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. "Your celestial devil body was actually able to fool Emo Zhu's eyes. You really are impressive. 9th disciple of Emo Gate, you should think this through carefully. Between the two of us, we are either friends or enemies. There is no third choice. If you refuse today, then when we meet again on the battlefield, I will no longer hold back." "Sorry." Ningchen refused once more. "That's truly a pity." Dong Wang sighed regretfully. Without saying anything more, he turned around and left. It was a pity that such an expert could not be taken in as a subordinate. The clouds surged, and the king left. He did not insist, but he was filled with regret. The choice of one's position was never up to him. The next time they met, there would be no appreciation, only a merciless slaughter. "Jinsi East King, it's amazing that your cultivation has reached such a level," Xiang Yuan said softly as he watched Jinsi East King leave. "That's not a good thing. It means that when we meet again in the future, we'll likely be facing another powerful enemy," said Lulua gravely. "That old man has been working with Sovereign Jinshi for a long time. This is indeed quite troublesome." Xiang Yuan nodded, and a wisp of brilliance flashed through his eyes as he said, "However, there are no eternal enemies, nor are there eternal friends. Perhaps we can make use of this as well. Let's leave first." Since the East King was able to find this place, Sovereign Lord Jin, she should be able to do the same. Ningchen spoke and pulled Iner outside. Lulua nodded. She put away the medicinal herbs that she had yet to open and prepared to leave. Xiang Yuan looked at Lulua and said, "I'm going to take care of something. You can leave first. I'll meet up with you soon." Lulua's eyes narrowed slightly. "Be careful. Don't worry." After saying that, Xiang Yuan took a step forward and disappeared into the void. Lulua finished putting away the medicinal herbs and glanced at Zichuan. "Let's go." Purple Marquis nodded and followed her. "Ningchen, where are we going?" asked Dean. "Are on the way. We're leaving Jinsi Star. Since Dong Wang was able to find us so quickly, it's pointless for us to go anywhere else. Leaving this star is the most important thing. As for after we leave," Ningchen's eyes flashed. "We're going to Xiaoya Chang, and to find Pavilion Master Xiaoya." "You're going to find that black-hearted merchant?" Iner was astonished. "Why do you want to find him?" "If something happens to the phoenix body, my strength will be greatly affected. Without the restriction of my extreme speed, it'll be quite a hidden danger when dealing with Master Mo in the future. If possible, I want the phoenix body to recover as soon as possible," said Ningchen. That black-hearted merchant has a way? Asked Iner. I don't know. Ningchen shook his head and said. However, this person was able to tell that I was a demon back then. He must have an ability that ordinary people can't compare to. Besides, in the human realm beyond heaven, very few people know about the Heavenly Book martial arts. This person named the 10 guest rooms after the Heavenly Book martial arts. It's really strange. Perhaps we can get some answers from him. Will he tell us? Asked Iner worriedly. Merchants pursue profit. If he really knows a way, we'll have to see if we can pay the price he wants, said Ningchen calmly. While they were talking, Lulua and Zichuan caught up from behind. The four of them left Jinxi Star together. Outside Jinxi Star, Ningchen looked at the two of them and said, Fourth senior sister, seventh senior brother, I'm going to leave to find a way to recover the phoenix body. I'll meet up with you in the future. Lulua nodded. You know all 4 bases. Come back early and be careful. Okay. Ningchen responded softly. He didn't stay any longer and left with Iner. 9 days later, Jinxi City, Ningchen and Iner appeared on the Red Wan Star. In the city, there were still people coming and going in front of the Xiaoyachang restaurant. The frighteningly high price didn't stop the enthusiasm of the influential people in the city. Ningchen walked towards the restaurant. He didn't notice that the name of this star was the same as the ancient star in the depths of the star domain. It seemed like it wasn't a coincidence that the Xiaoyachang restaurant was built here. Esteemed guests have arrived. Hong Wan, go and welcome them. The Xiaoyachang restaurant on the 2nd floor said calmly. Yes. Hong Wan respectfully bowed and walked downstairs. In front of the Xiaoyachang restaurant, Hong Wan looked at the 2 people walking over. A strange expression flashed across her beautiful face. It was them. Sister Hong Wan. Seeing the figures in front of the restaurant, Iner's delicate face revealed joy. She let go of her hand and ran over. Hong Wan's eyes also revealed a gentle expression. She patted the little girl's head and said, Iner, you've grown taller again. Iner vigorously shook her head and unhappily said, Don't pat my head. I won't grow any taller. Hong Wan lightly smiled and looked at the black-clothed young man. Young Master Ning, the restaurant master is waiting on the 2nd floor. Please. Many thanks. Ningchen replied and walked towards the 2nd floor. On the 2nd floor, in the restaurant Ming, the Xiaoyachang restaurant master had removed her silver-gray cloak and was wearing casual clothes. The sharp aura on her face had also disappeared, and she looked no different from an ordinary person. Ningchen knocked on the door a few times. After hearing the response, he immediately pushed the door open and entered. Brother Ning, I didn't expect to meet you again so soon. The Xiaoyachang restaurant master turned around and revealed a smile. Restaurant master's elegance hasn't diminished in the slightest, Ningchen politely said. Ha! The Xiaoyachang restaurant master chuckled and said, One doesn't visit a temple without a reason. Speak frankly. I'm here to ask if there's any way to undo the self-sealing of the heavenly soul, Ningchen seriously said. The Xiaoyachang restaurant master slightly frowned and said, Why do you ask? Something happened to my phoenix body, and I had no choice but to seal my heavenly soul, Ningchen replied. Self-sealing of the divine soul is troublesome. The Xiaoyachang restaurant master put down the scissors she was using to cut the flowers and plants, and washed her hands. She said, Forcefully unsealing it will undoubtedly harm your heavenly soul. The gains do not make up for the losses. If there's no need, just maintain the current state. The cultivation technique you cultivate is not ordinary. I believe it won't cause too much of an impact on your body. Is there really no way? Ningchen frowned. There may be, but I don't know. In terms of the attainments of the 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls, Master Mo is the best in the world. Actually, you should ask him. The Xiaoyachang restaurant master said honestly. Ningchen heard this and calmly said, If I could ask him, I wouldn't have come to ask you. Oh. The Xiaoyachang restaurant master was slightly surprised and said, You turned hostile so quickly? I thought I would have to wait for a few more days. You know that there's a problem with Master Mo. Ningchen narrowed his eyes and said, As for what problem Master Mo has, I'm not too sure. However, based on the changes in Mo Gate these past few years, I can deduce a few things. Mo Gate's disciples cultivate too quickly, but they also die too quickly. The Xiaoya Chang, and restaurant master, thought for a moment and said, Since you can't ask Master Mo, I have another person in mind. I just don't know if you dare to go. Who? Asked Ningchen. Heaven's Speaker, said the Xiaoya Chang and restaurant master. Her? Ningchen frowned once more. Why do you say that? According to legends, Heaven's speakers can converse with the heavens. From that, it can be seen that their divine soul is incomparably powerful. Perhaps they can help you. Furthermore, other than going to see her, do you have any other methods? As for whether you dare or not, the Xiaoya Chang and restaurant master paused for a moment before continuing. Once you ask her for help, your identity will very likely be lost. I don't know how a heaven speaker will treat a devil. If the two of you meet, it'll truly be troublesome. Is a heaven speaker's strength really as terrifying as you say? Asked Ningchen. It's even worse than that. The Xiaoya Chang and restaurant master calmly replied. It can be said that if a heaven speaker is in the corporeal realm, they're invincible in the corporeal realm. If they're in the true realm, they're invincible in the true realm. If they open their eyes, the situation will be even more terrifying. Ningchen was silent. After a moment, he nodded and politely said, Thank you for your advice. I'll take my leave first. I'll definitely pay you a visit in the future to express my thanks. No problem. The Xiaoya Chang and restaurant master faintly smiled. I can't help you with this matter. Just treat this information as a free gift from me. I hope we'll have a chance to work together again in the future. We definitely will. Until we meet again. Ningchen responded, then turned around and walked downstairs. On the first floor, Ina was sitting at a table and eating. When she saw Ningchen come down, she threw down the chopsticks in her hand and ran over. Did you manage to find a way? Ina's large eyes flashed with anticipation. Not at the moment. Let's go find someone else. She might know, replied Ningchen as he looked into the distance. Who? Asked Ina doubtfully. A heaven speaker. Ningchen's expression was grave. Chapter 666. On the Wish Planet, Heavenly Speech Peak. It was a paradise in the human world. On the peak, there was an apricot tree full of white flowers that didn't wither in the wind and snow. The apricot flowers blooming in the wind and snow were white and pure, surpassing the cold snow in the sky. Under the apricot tree, there was a woman in a white dress. Her eyes were closed, and she seemed to have merged with heaven and earth. She seemed like she would break through the sky at any moment. The heaven speaker was rumored to be the only human who could communicate with heaven and earth. They were existences comparable to gods and Buddhas, and they had been revered since ancient times. Perhaps it was a coincidence, or perhaps it was because the heavens favored women, but every generation of heaven speaker had been a woman. There had never been a man. At the foot of the mountain, Ningchen held Yiner's hand and walked up. Out of respect, he had chosen to walk up the mountain. The woman didn't seem to know. She continued to observe the world with her eyes closed, experiencing the hardships of the mortal world. Half a day later, Ningchen came up the mountain. He looked at the woman under the apricot tree and politely bowed. I am Ningchen. Greetings, heaven speaker. The woman turned around and calmly said, You're here. The heaven speaker's tone was ordinary, as if she was greeting a friend she hadn't seen in many years. It didn't feel out of place at all, and it made people unconsciously lower their guard. Ningchen nodded. I'm sorry for disturbing you. I came because I have something to ask of heaven's speaker. Speak, said the woman calmly. I want to know if there is a way to unseal a heavenly soul after it seals itself, said Ningchen. If there is, then I can do it, said the heaven speaker calmly. Ningchen's eyes lit up when he heard that. Heaven speaker, please help me. I can help you. But you have to prove that you won't become the source of disaster, replied the heaven speaker. Ningchen narrowed his eyes. What do you mean by that? Devils are emotionless by nature and love to kill. You are the most special devil I have ever seen, but you are still a devil. That is a fact that cannot be changed. The heaven speaker looked at the young man and calmly said, It is indeed extraordinary that you have been able to maintain your rationality this entire time. However, you have to prove to me that you will never lose your rationality." Ning Chen sighed softly in his heart. He had already been very careful and used the phoenix origin to cover up the demonic energy. However, he still couldn't hide it from the person in front of him. The reputation of a heaven speaker was not in vain. After a moment, Ning Chen suppressed the thoughts in his heart and asked, "How do I prove it?" The heaven speaker stepped out from under the tree and said calmly, "Stand under the apricot tree before the sun sets. If you can walk out with your own reason, I promise to help you. If you can't, then leave." The heaven speaker can't help a demon who can bring disaster to the human world at any time. Hearing this, Ning Chen looked at the apricot tree and frowned. An apricot tree blooming in the snow was really strange. Ina nervously grabbed the former's hand and refused to let go. "It's fine." Ning Chen comforted her softly. He let go of the little girl's hand and walked forward step by step. When they passed each other, the heaven speaker warned, "Remember to calm your heart. Don't let your demonic nature affect your rationality." "Many thanks." Ning Chen agreed and walked towards the apricot tree. The moment the devil walked in, the calm apricot tree immediately began to change. As it swayed, white flowers filled the sky and turned into heavenly stars that revolved around it. Ina was worried. She was just about to go forward when the heaven speaker stopped her. "Don't get close. This is the power of laws. Your cultivation base is still too low. You won't be able to endure it." The heaven speaker looked at the apricot tree with white flowers revolving around it. "Senior heaven speaker, Ning Chen will be fine, right? He's a good person and won't willfully kill the innocent," said Ina anxiously. "As long as he doesn't have any thoughts of bringing disaster to the world, he'll be fine." The heaven speaker looked at the figure under the apricot tree. He didn't expose the little girl's well-intentioned lies. The resentment on the devil's body was clearly visible under the apricot tree. With such a dense resentment, it could be seen just how much blood this devil's hands were stained with. She hadn't personally witnessed the past, so she didn't have the qualifications to judge. Now that the devil in front of her was still rational, it was worth testing. Hopefully, the result wouldn't disappoint her. The apricot tree swayed and white flowers filled the sky. It was so beautiful, but it was so dangerous that no one dared to approach. The heaven speaker looked forward, his fingers moving, mouth chanting magical incantations, softly speaking with the heavenly language. The wind rustled through the snowy peak. White flowers filled the sky. The heaven speaker's body flickered with spiritual light. Her fine black hair danced in the wind, making her look like a fairy. Under the apricot tree, Ning Chen let out a muffled groan. Devilish chi crazily surged out, and his devilish nature was completely stimulated. Outside the apricot flowers, Ina clenched her fists. She was abnormally nervous. On the mountain, snowflakes and white flowers were constantly revolving. It was impossible to tell them apart. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. Within the white flowers, the devil was undergoing the most terrifying devilish test of his life. Ugh! With a pained groan, blood dripped from the corner of the devil's mouth. This was the most direct clash between his devilish nature and reason. In the space of consciousness, the two devils started fighting. Boundless rage surged and roared. The black-haired devil and the white-haired devil. One was as calm as the abyss while the other was as violent as a waterfall. The cold edge of their swords was dyed red. The intense battle became more and more intense. The Taoism's Taisher and the devil's crimson drill cried out in the light of life and death. Devilish nature and reason. One was nature, while the other was a reflection of memories. At this moment, they were fighting for control of the body. Space break. The two swords clashed. Wild wind broke through the air. The moves that originated from the same source collided violently. A pool of blood splashed out. He retreated a few steps. The equally matched swords heavily injured the two devils. "Devil, why must you suppress your nature?" The white-haired devil sneered. The crimson drill in his hand became more and more violent and heavier. The sword that was stained with the blood of thousands of creatures became heavier with every swing. If you forget what you're living for, what's the use of nature? It's just a beast's instinct. The black-haired devil's eyes were as deep as the abyss. Although the devil chi on his sword was also violent, each of his moves was abnormally calm. He was observing his opponent's every flaw. Foolish excuses. It seems like you've been greatly affected by the phoenix form. Then hand over this body to me. As he said that, the white-haired devil pointed his finger at his sword. Boundless sword pressure spread out. Surging devil waves drowned the entire space of consciousness. Devil form, heaven's tears. The devil form appeared again. Heaven's tears of sorrow, and the resentment of millions of creatures rose. Dark clouds rolled in the sky. A terrifying pressure swept down, causing the world to tremble. Devil form, blood flame. Seeing this, the devil flames on the black-haired devil's sword rapidly spread. The blood-red flames soared into the sky, forming a terrifying heaven-burning terror. The devil form clashed. Heaven and earth shook violently. The black-haired devil flew out. Taishar's sword stabbed into the ground as blood flowed from his arm. Outside the space of consciousness, under the apricot tree, the white flowers in the sky became chaotic and unstable, due to the effects of the battle in the space of consciousness. Not good, the heaven speaker softly said. Her eyes were tightly closed, and a trace of seriousness flashed through her face. Was her reason defeated by her demonic nature? This was the result she was most unwilling to see. Miss Ener, move back. The heaven speaker calmly ordered. He looked at the figure under the apricot tree, ready to attack at any time. In the space of consciousness, the black-haired devil who was forcefully supporting his injured body stood up once again. Taishar's devil flames surged in his hand. He waved his sword, and an unparalleled sword intent resounded in the sky. The peak of sword intent shone in the world. Swords are killing weapons. Your sword has been contaminated with too many distracting thoughts that shouldn't be there. The white-haired devil snorted. He also raised his sword. A blood-red wave violently surged. A terrifying killing intent dyed the sky red. Devil and sword. There was no distinction between you and me. The sword and the devil and the sword, passed by each other. The two swords clashed. At the same time, the space of consciousness collapsed. The black devil waves continued to spread, destroying everything in sight. Outside the apricot tree, the heaven speaker's expression was grave. The next move would determine the victor. The space of consciousness that had experienced a fierce battle had collapsed to the limit. The two who were separated from each other gathered their remaining strength. The next move was the final move. Unparalleled devil essence shone like stars. Crimson Sword awakened and rushed to the sky. The black-haired devil also used his strongest move. Sword light gathered around his body, fusing with his devil chi. At the peak, only one appeared. Nirvana. The magnificent sword was like a boundless wave on the sword. It was so dazzling that even heaven and earth seemed to have stopped. In the raging waves, two extremes collided. The entire space of consciousness collapsed. Under the apricot tree, the white flower sensed something and turned into an inescapable net, sealing the devil's surroundings. It's out. Outside the apricot tree, Ener was delighted. She ran forward, but was blocked by the heaven speaker. Something's wrong, retreat. The heaven speaker pulled Ener and retreated 30 meters away. Under the apricot tree, the white-haired, black-eyed devil opened his eyes. A terrifying devil chi shook violently, attacking the white flowers. Ener's body shook. She looked at the devil's eyes with disbelief. Stay here and don't move. The heaven speaker waved his hand and froze the space around Ener. He stepped forward and guided the heaven and earth's spirit chi towards the devil in the white flowers. Heaven speaker? Haha. There was no longer any rationality in his arrogant laughter. Under his fluttering white hair, the devil's eyes were filled with killing intent. With a wave of his hand, Crimson Sword appeared. Devil technique, blood flame. The devil held his sword horizontally. Devil flames surged, burning the sky and boiling the sea. The rising blood-colored flames fiercely attacked the surrounding white flowers. It was an indescribable scene. Seeing that the devil's power had exceeded the limit of the laws, the heaven speaker flipped his hand and sent a seal into the void. The laws of space appeared for the first time. The apricot flowers scattered and the two figures disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already in the void. What a pity! I thought he would be the one to win." The Heaven Speaker looked at the devil, who had lost all rationality inside. "Did my appearance disappoint you? Humans always sympathize with the weak. That's why they became so cowardly. Now face this cruel reality, heaven's tears." The white-haired devil snorted and waved crimson sword. A blood-colored wave rose and rumbled. Above the 9 heavens, the resentment of millions of living beings appeared. Chapter 667. On the Heaven Speech Peak, the white-haired demonic cultivator was facing the Heaven Speaker. The 9 heavens fell, and the resentment of millions of living beings surged. Boundless pressure descended upon the world. The demonic cultivator took the initiative, using the resentment of living beings to suppress the Heaven Speaker. A moment later, he stepped forward and started the battle. The sword arrived, and the flames of war soared into the sky. With the help of demonic energy, the demonic cultivator attacked with a killing move. The Heaven Speaker raised his hand, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered, blocking the red sword. The sword's aura is cold. Are demons really unable to be purified? With a sigh, the Heaven Speaker waved his hand, and the demonic cultivator in front of him was pushed away. Soon after, his fingers moved quickly, and a strange seal appeared. The surrounding world sensed it, and the falling snowflakes turned into sharp blades that attacked the demonic cultivator. Blood flame. Seeing this, the demonic cultivator attacked with his red sword, and blood flame appeared. In an instant, the demonic flames around him turned into waves that scattered the snowflakes and sharp blades. Blood flame sky. After one move, the demonic cultivator attacked again. The blood flame changed direction and rushed toward the woman in front of him. The blood flame approached, but the Heaven Speaker didn't move at all. When the demonic flames were 3 feet away, they automatically stopped and couldn't move forward. Without any words or persuasion, the Heaven Speaker knew that the demonic cultivator had lost his mind, and there was no turning back. The Heaven Speaker waved his hand to disperse the demonic flames, and with a step, she arrived in front of the demonic cultivator. She raised her hand, and the wind and clouds swirled. With a bang, she pressed her palm on the demonic cultivator's chest. Immediately, blood splattered and fell from the sky. The demonic cultivator took a few steps back, and he raised his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of his mouth. The wound on his body stimulated the demonic cultivator's berserk nature. With a deep shout, he stepped into the void and used his demonic technique again. Blood path. The blood light opened a path, and the yellow spring returned. In the surging demonic aura, the white-haired demonic cultivator passed by in an instant, and the killing intent on his sword surged as he slashed at the woman in front of him. The Heaven Speaker blocked the sword. Although she was suppressed by the resentment of living beings, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around her was still powerful. Layers of protective barriers blocked the sword, and the yellow spring couldn't reach her. The Heaven Speaker looked at the devil, who had completely lost his mind. Her slender hand pierced through the devil chi and pressed onto the devil cultivator's chest again. The demon took 3 steps back. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The heavens were unshakable. It was so breathtaking that it made one feel despair. However, the demon did not feel this at all. He brandished his sword, and the sword tip surged with bloody radiance. Sonorous sounds of swords rang out incessantly. In the sky above Tianyu Peak, demonic shadows crossed each other continuously. Scarlet flames reflected the sun. They were fast and heavy, pure demons without feeling or heart, only killing by nature. In the white snowflakes that filled the sky, it was so dazzling. Amidst the sword light, the Heaven Speaker stood motionless. His body glowed brilliantly as he blocked the demonic sword again and again. The Heaven Speaker of the mortal world was a powerful existence comparable to the gods and Buddhas in ancient times. Before they opened their eyes, they spoke with the heavens. After they opened their eyes, they were a part of the heaven and earth. Mo cultivators were strong, and Tianyu was even more immeasurable. With a raise of his hand, the wind and clouds awaited his orders. After exchanging several moves, it was difficult for the sword to penetrate the heavenly moat. The demonic cultivator's eyes flashed with a blood-red light. With a shout, The heavenly demon's true form appeared in the human world. In the billowing demonic waves, a 300-meter-tall demonic figure descended. A powerful pressure violently swept out. Royal Heavenly Demon. The Heavens Speaker frowned slightly. No wonder the demonic chi on his body was so astonishing. It turned out that he had swallowed the power of a Royal Heavenly Demon. The demonic shadow stepped forward and swept its leg. Crackling sounds rang out. It was a simple move, but it caused the wind to howl and the void to shatter. The incomparably powerful heavenly demons might dissipated the wind and clouds. The Heavens Speaker raised his hand to block, but with a loud bang, his body that hadn't moved from its original position was forced back half a step. After the Heavens Speaker retreated, the demonic cultivator's wild nature erupted. Demonic flames rose around his body. The heavenly demon's 6 absolutes shook the world. Demonic flames set the prairie ablaze. Demonic flames rose, setting the prairie ablaze. Endless waves of fire attacked the Heavens Speaker in front of him again and again. The heavenly demon's divine ability, that shook the ancient times, reappeared in the human world today. The Heavens Speaker's body trembled. He took a step forward, and space accepted his command. In an instant, he moved hundreds of meters away. What a powerful demon's divine ability! The Heavens Speaker looked at the burnt void in front of him and whispered. Soon after, he twisted his fingers and chanted an incantation in the language of the heavens. A moment later, thunder and lightning flashed in the 9 heavens. Dark clouds gathered and drifting snowflakes turned into a snowstorm, drowning out the demonic flames. Heavenly Demon's 6 absolutes, 1,000 gods burial. Demonic chi spread out, burying the heavens and destroying the gods. The heavenly demon's divine ability shook the heavens and the earth, turning a part of the world into a land of death. The Heavens Speaker turned around, and his figure moved continuously. He once again retreated hundreds of meters away. Seeing the endless demonic chi, he frowned slightly and stopped. With a flip of his palm, spiritual chi gathered from all directions, forming a cage that sealed the spreading demonic chi. Spiritual chi and demonic chi collided, and the wind and clouds fell rapidly. Terrifying aftershocks spread out, and the void collapsed one after another, shocking the world. Below, Iner, who was protected by the power of laws, looked at the battle in the sky. Her big eyes were filled with anxiety and worry. Above, the battle was already white-hot, and it was becoming more and more intense. The demonic cultivator, who had transformed into a heavenly demon, displayed the ability to fight against the Heavens Speaker. As demonic chi surged, it was earth-shaking might. 6 ultimates of the heavenly demon, 10,000 demons roared to the heavens. The situation of the battle was difficult to resolve. The demonic cultivators gathered their chi, and violent demonic chi gushed out. Above the void, tens of thousands of demonic shadows appeared, and each of them had a terrifying demonic chi. The appearance of tens of thousands of demons caused the entire world to shake violently. Caught in the midst of the 10,000 demons, even the Heavens Speaker's expression became serious. She formed a seal with her slender hands, and a brilliant light scattered down from the sky. Radiant power illuminated the world, burning the 10,000 demons. 10,000 demons devour the heavens. The demonic cultivator roared, and the 10,000 demons charged at the Heavens Speaker. The battle between the saints and demons reached a blazing white. Within the holy light, demonic figures rapidly dissipated, one after another. The saints and demons countered each other, and they were constantly melting. The 10,000 demons were endless, and the holy light was being consumed more and more. The Heavens Speaker formed another seal, and the power of the sun descended upon the mortal world. The demonic figures howled in grief, and half of them instantly dissipated under the burning of the sun. The demonic chi scattered, and was purified by the holy light. You can't stop the demons. The moment the 10,000 demons attacked the holy light, the demonic cultivator's figure swept forward, and a fist that shook the heavens crashed down. The wind and clouds blocked the attack, but they soon dissipated. The Heavens Speaker retreated 2 steps, and a drop of blood silently dripped from the corner of her mouth. How is it, Heavens Speaker? How much can your heavens help you? The white-haired arrogant demonic cultivator coldly looked at her. Demonic chi coiled around his body, And for the first time, he displayed a world-shocking ability. Demonic Cultivator, the path of no return is long, and you shouldn't fall into it. With another sigh, the Heaven Speaker released all of his true yuan. Instantly, strange spiritual inscriptions appeared. A moment later, they collapsed and dissipated. The moment the seal dissipated, a red color appeared between the woman's eyebrows. It was abnormally beautiful, as if a bodhisattva had descended to the world. She slowly opened her eyes, and they were like the stars, the sun, and the moon. They were indescribable, and the blue dome of heaven sensed it. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts dispersed the rolling tribulation clouds in the sky. The Heaven Speaker opened her eyes, and a vision appeared in the sky. Multicolored light rose, and dense mist floated up and down. The laws of heaven and earth coiled around the spirit cultivator. The most mysterious legend in the mortal world had appeared in the mortal world again after countless years. Chapter 668. On Tianyu Peak, the winds and clouds changed rapidly. The Heaven Speaker had opened his eyes. The most unfathomable existence had appeared for the first time. The woman standing in the air had a bright red forehead. Her plain white dress was spotless, and her fine black hair danced in the wind. She was like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world, stunning the world. Her opened eyes were like stars, like the sun and moon, so beautiful that it made one's heart ache. The Heaven Speaker had opened his eyes, transforming into the heavens. The most powerful existence had yet to make a move, but an indescribable pressure had already descended. It was as if heaven and earth were bound by a cage, stagnant and difficult to move. The devil was fearless. His white hair danced wildly as he took a step forward. Demonic energy surged like a tide, unceasingly spreading outwards. 6 ultimates of the Sky Demon, Reincarnation Calamity. Reincarnation Calamity appeared. Above the void, a huge black vortex appeared. One of the most powerful divine abilities of the Sky Demon clan had appeared. Immediately, black lightning descended, adding to the might of the Sky Demon. Demonic lightning struck the heavens. The demonic figure disappeared in an instant, and a huge fist descended. Thousands of lightning bolts surged, its divine might shaking the world. The demonic attack arrived, but the Heaven Speaker didn't dodge. His eyes that were as brilliant as the sun and moon flashed. Heaven and earth surged, and the lightning instantly disappeared. The body of the devil was then sent flying with heavy injuries. Blood dyed the sky. The difference in strength was indescribable. The Heaven Speaker who had opened his eyes had transformed into heaven and earth, unshakable. The devil vomited blood. His blood didn't stop flowing, and his wild nature didn't stop. With a shout, his demonic energy surged, and his white hair became wild. Wave after wave of demonic energy rose continuously between heaven and earth. 6 ultimates of the Sky Demon Star Transformation. Demonic might rushed into the 9 heavens, and the stars in the universe changed. In the indistinct starry sky, one after another, great stars were drawn in by the demonic might. Their brilliance descended on Tianyu Peak. In an instant, numerous illusory stars revolved around the devil's body. With a step, the great stars sank. Incomparably vigorous origin force erupted, suppressing heaven and earth. The destructive might descended. The Heaven Speaker raised his hand, and the wind and clouds around him changed. The entire world turned into a barrier, blocking in front of him. The power of the great stars was shocking, breaking through layer after layer of obstruction. However, the world was boundless, and the power was also boundless. The final illusory star collapsed, and it was difficult to pass. Is the Avicii depravity really so irresistible to you? As she spoke, the Heaven Speaker waved her hand to disperse the demonic chi. Shortly after, her figure disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in front of the demon. She raised her delicate hand and pressed it against the demon's chest. The demonic cultivator groaned and retreated several steps. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and dyed his body red. Although his body was heavily wounded, and his white hair was dyed with blood, the wild nature in the demon cultivator's eyes didn't change at all. He forcefully stabilized himself and reared his head back in laughter. Falling into Avicii, how delightful! The demonic cultivator was arrogant, and did not care about the injuries on his body. He took a step forward and started the battle again. Loud bangs rang out incessantly. The demon who had lost his mind had eyes filled with killing intent. He had no sense of reason or emotion. Below, Einer's face was full of tears as she looked at the battle in the sky. Her heart was throbbing with pain. Why did it become like this? It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. She was in extreme grief and pain. Einer's body trembled continuously. Her cultivation, which had been suppressed by Feng Yuan, erupted in an instant. A blood-colored pillar of light soared into the sky, connecting the heavens and the earth. In an instant, the dark clouds in the sky rolled, and the demonic aura surged. The heavenly demon tribulation had appeared. The change in Tianyu Peak caused the battle to change at the same time. The heavenly demon tribulation descended, and the demonic aura between heaven and earth was unprecedentedly dense. The rolling demonic clouds covered the sky and the sun. Haha! The demonic cultivator was stunned for a moment before he laughed loudly. His dark eyes looked at the demonic clouds in the sky and he said crazily, "Heaven's speaker, I will show you what a real demon is." The heavenly demon tribulation descended, and the demonic cultivator's figure moved along with it. He used his demonic body to withstand the heavenly demon tribulation, and his aura rose rapidly. When the demonic cultivator blocked the heavenly demon tribulation, heaven and earth sensed it, and the demonic clouds became stronger. However, as the demonic clouds gathered, the demonic cultivator's aura also rose continuously. Seeing this, the heaven speaker's expression turned serious. She flipped her delicate hand and spoke with the heavens. In an instant, heaven and earth received the order. The demonic clouds quickly dissipated, and the setting sun shone down once again. In a few short breaths, the demonic cultivator's aura had increased by several times. The extremely dense demonic aura shook continuously, and heaven and earth couldn't bear it. It distorted violently and formed a huge black vortex. In the western sky, the setting sun shone alone, and it was about to set. The aura of the great battle had reached the most critical moment. 6 Ultimates of the Heavenly Demon, demonic flames burning the plains. The demonic technique reappeared, and its power was completely different from before. The black demonic flames burned the 9 continents, and the entire sky above Heavenly Speech Peak was drowned. The terrifying scene made all living creatures within 1,000 miles tremble in fear. Looking at the demonic flames that rose violently around her, the heaven speaker frowned slightly. She looked at the setting sun in the sky and took a step forward, and her body slowly rose. "Do you think you can escape?" The demonic cultivator snorted coldly. The flames around him soared into the sky and attacked the former. When the demonic flames approached, they broke through several obstacles and immediately dissipated. However, an endless stream of flames swept over, constantly attacking the obstacles of the laws. Above the 9 heavens, the heaven speaker stood, looking at the demonic cultivator below. With a flip of her delicate hand, the setting sun's final brilliance gathered. The void suddenly trembled, and soon after, the wind and clouds gathered rapidly, forming a huge hand that fell down. It crushed everything, annihilated the demonic flames, and landed on the demonic cultivator's body. A pool of blood splashed out, filling the sky. The demonic cultivator fell from the sky, smashing into Heavenly Speech Peak. The spilled demonic blood dyed Heavenly Speech Peak red. On the apricot tree, the white flowers were also dyed red by the demonic cultivator's blood. It was abnormally dazzling. An irresistible fate. Even if the arrogant demonic cultivator was unyielding, even if he was brave, he had no choice but to be stained with the blood of defeat. The demonic cultivator that had returned to his human form staggered and vomited blood. With a clang, his sword stopped his body. "Don't fight anymore." Ina ran forward, tears in her eyes. She grabbed the demonic cultivator's arm and begged. The white-haired demonic cultivator's gaze was cold and emotionless. He grabbed the latter's neck, and demonic energy surged, devouring her soul and taking her life. An unexpected scene occurred. The little girl's body trembled, and her vitality quickly flowed out, fusing into the demonic cultivator's body. In the sky, the heaven speaker's expression suddenly changed. Killing intent appeared on her beautiful and peaceful face for the first time. She took a step forward and instantly landed. The current you is extremely pitiful. The Heaven's Speaker couldn't hide her anger. Her slender hand carried the power of thunder as she slammed it towards the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator waved his sword, forcefully blocking the heavenly might. With a world-shaking tremor, he was forced back dozens of steps. Dozens of feet away, the little girl's vitality was gradually fading away. She looked at the demonic cultivator in front of her, and 2 streams of tears silently fell from her eyes. "Wake up!" An undetectable voice followed the gradually fading vitality, vanishing into the cold wind. Her tears fell onto the demonic cultivator's hand, but they didn't fall into his heart. Doomsday heavenly punishment, heaven's judgment. Seeing the little girl's vitality gradually fading away, the Heaven's Speaker was unable to restrain her anger. Since she had reincarnated, this was her first judgment. In an instant, thunder fell from the sky above Heavenly Speech Peak. There was no beginning and no end. No end and no end. The scene of doomsday drowned out everything. Chapter 669. The apricot flowers on the Heavenly Speech Peak were dyed red. The Heaven's Speaker was furious as he tried to judge the heavenly punishment for the first time. Lightning covered the entire Heavenly Speech Peak. The frightening heavenly might spread out endlessly, reaching thousands of miles away. In the lightning, demonic aura overflowed and blocked the heavenly punishment one after another. The demonic aura that surpassed the limits of the mortal world resisted the wrath of the heavens. In the hands of the demonic cultivator, the little girl's life force was gradually dissipating. Suddenly, on the Heavenly Speech Peak, snowflakes started to fall. "This is sword chi." The sudden change stunned the Heaven's Speaker and the demonic cultivator. After a while, the demonic cultivator came back to his senses and let go of the little girl in his hands, retreating quickly. The Heaven's Speaker also waved his hand to stop the heavenly punishment. He looked at the little girl not far away and was surprised. The snowflakes drifted in the air. It was so beautiful and enchanting. In Einar's body, an extremely powerful sword intent soared into the sky, crisscrossing and magnificent. The light on the sword bloomed beautifully in the snowflakes. The strongest sword surpassed the peak and stood alone. "Nirvana! It turns out that you never believed in me." The sword light arrived. The demonic cultivator's eyes were extremely gloomy. He stepped forward and waved his red sword to block the nirvana. The sword intent was endless, and so was the sword light. In order to protect his disciple, the phoenix body had used the nirvana when she was alive. He was caught off guard and lost the initiative. The sword that was right in front of him was extremely fast. The demonic cultivator waved his red sword and blocked most of the sword light, but he could not block the final sword. A dazzling bloody light shone. The red sword that was refined by phoenix blood flew out from Einar's body and was guided by the nirvana. It turned into the final sword light and pierced through the demonic cultivator's body. Ugh! With a groan he fell to the ground. Snowflakes flew everywhere, and the demonic cultivator vomited blood. His violent gaze gradually lost its sharpness. In the sky, the phantom of the red robe appeared. The remaining soul imprint almost dissipated after one sword. In front of Einar, the red robe raised his hand and gathered the last of his soul power and poured it into the little girl's body to restore her life force. Master. Einar opened her eyes and tears fell from her eyes. Her face was pale. "I'm not used to calling you Ningchen." Ningchen revealed a gentle smile and said softly. When Einar heard this, her tears turned into laughter. Just as she was about to speak, she realized that the former's figure was disappearing continuously. She could not help but feel anxious. "Don't worry, it's just a soul imprint left on you. It's just that I've used up all my strength." Einar demons are heartless by nature. Xiazi is like that, and so is the demonic body. However, if Xiazi can regain his rationality, so can the demonic body. In the knowing destiny state, you won't lose to anyone, let alone yourself. Ningchen said calmly. Then, the remnant of his soul gradually dissipated into the heavens and the earth. For the last time, he looked at the Heaven's Speaker, nodded slightly, and then disappeared. "Heaven's Speaker, please." The final request reverberated endlessly on Heavenly Word Peak, not dissipating for a long time. In front of the apricot tree, the Heaven Speaker looked at the dissipating red light in the sky and sighed softly. His eyes that were like the sun, moon, and stars slowly closed, and his aura was restrained. Step by step, she walked towards the heavily injured and unconscious demon. The Heaven Speaker raised his hand, and wind and clouds gathered. Upon seeing this, Einar forcefully supported her body that had yet to fully recover, and jogged over to stand in front of him. Her eyes were filled with pleading. "Don't kill him. Don't worry. I'm not going to kill him." The Heaven Speaker responded softly, and lifted his hand to push the little girl away. Then, he condensed wind and clouds and poured them into the demon's body. With the power of the heavens and the earth, he sealed the demon. Then, he found the phoenix origin and heaven soul, and forcefully pulled them out from the demon's body. The phoenix is noble by nature, but it actually gave its origin to a human. Since the phoenix has chosen to trust you, I will choose to trust you again. As soon as he finished speaking, the Heaven Speaker flipped his hand and spoke with the heavens. With the power of the heavens and the earth, he released the seal on the heaven soul. In an instant, snowflakes circled around Heavenly Word Peak. The majestic spiritual chi stabilized the laws of the heavens. The moment the seal was released, it helped knowing destiny's heaven soul to avoid the punishment of the laws. The red coat that was floating in the wind and snow was extremely weak. After being chased by Master Mo, the 3 kings of Jinsei, and the 13 envoys of the Hall of the Dead, even the powerful phoenix could not spread its wings and soar. The spiritual chi of the heavens and the earth nourished the soul. Knowing destiny's weak soul body gradually stabilized. The phoenix origin entered and returned to its master's body. The phoenix origin returned and evolved its bloodline. The body of the phoenix rapidly solidified at a speed visible to the naked eye, and gradually recovered its original appearance. Not long after, the Heaven Speaker stopped and pondered for a moment. He looked at the little girl beside him and said softly, "Einar, I have done what I can do. The rest is up to you." Hearing this, Einar wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and said, "What can I do? Your master is entangled with too much karma. If it is not removed, it will be difficult for his body to fully recover. In this world, the best way to remove karma is to have the people's faith or to pray for blessings. However, your master is not a Buddha or a god. He does not have his own believers, so you can only rely on you to pray one by one," the Heaven Speaker said seriously. "How many people do you need?" Einar asked. "I'm not sure." The Heaven Speaker shook his head and said, "With different karma, there will be more people who need to pray for blessings. It may be thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. Your master's karma is the most terrifying I have ever seen. It is not easy to remove it. You need to be mentally prepared. People's hearts are complicated, and it is difficult to distinguish between good and evil. The path of praying for blessings will definitely be filled with difficulties and obstacles. If you do not wake up, your master will not be able to wake up." Einar nodded firmly and said, "I will go down the mountain now and find someone to pray for blessings." After saying this, Einar walked to the front of the phoenix body and turned her back. She took one last look at the demon body not far away, and walked down the mountain step by step with a gloomy expression. Looking at the little girl's determined back, the Heaven Speaker gently sighed. In this child, she saw the most beautiful thing of humanity, a phoenix and a demon. One was noble and pure, the other was dark. Their personalities were completely different. To what extent could a child brought up by these two bodies reach this level? On the apricot tree on the peak, the blood on the white flowers had been purified. The white flowers bloomed in the snowflakes, pure and untainted. The Heaven Speaker turned around and looked at the demon body covered in snowflakes. With a wave of his hand, the demon body rose and flew to the apricot tree. Reason demonic nature. You have failed the first test. I will give you another chance. If you still cannot suppress your demonic nature this time, you will be buried under the apricot tree forever. You will never be able to leave this place in this lifetime. At the foot of the Heaven Speech Mountain, the delicate little girl carried the phoenix body and walked down the mountain towards the mortal world step by step. The setting sun in the west gradually lost its warmth. The cold night was coming, but the little girl did not seem to know. She did not stop walking and her heart was firm. Praying for blessings could remove karma. However, if one was not a deity, how could they receive blessings from the common people? Who would be willing to pray for a stranger? Praying for one person was easy. Praying for 10 people was equally easy. However, praying for 1,000 or 10,000 people was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The little girl knew this in her heart. However, if she did not do it, no one would do it. After Sister Qing Ning's accident, Ning Chen no longer had a family in this life. He had always been protecting her. This time, it was time for her to do something for him. Chapter 670. In the mortal world, the imperial city was bustling. On a festive day, the lanterns on the riverside were lit. Beautiful people were traveling on boats. It was a magnificent scene. In the distance, the little girl was carrying a red-clothed young man. She went from house to house, knocking on their doors, praying for blessings on this festive day. The commoners were kind and mercifully sent their blessings. The commoners were cold and merciless, chasing away the uninvited guests. The warmth and coldness of a person's heart was reflected clearly when the little girl knocked on their doors. Wearing the moon and stars, her hair was dyed with frost. As if she didn't know, she continued to sincerely knock on the doors of one commoner after another, praying for the person behind her. Hurry up and leave. Don't be an eyesore here. The festive day really is disappointing. After being rejected countless times, Einer silently left with Ning Chen on her back. Her expression didn't change at all, as she continued to walk to the next house. The coldness of a person's heart would always make people feel hatred when it didn't concern them. However, if it didn't concern them, who would think they had an obligation to offer their kindness to others? Einer didn't have any hatred or resentment. She walked step by step on the street, her gaze never once looking at the bustling scene in the distance. Because the street was far away, it was very quiet. It was a stark contrast to the bustling riverside. Her lonely figure was so weak. Even if she was a Xiantian, at this moment, she was the most helpless person in the mortal world. Praying for blessings was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. In the mortal world, perhaps only the illusory gods could receive so much worship. In the end, humans were inferior to gods. Knock knock. Einer stopped in front of another commoner's house and knocked on the door. She was so careful that she didn't want to make the owner unhappy. With a creak, the door opened. It was a pregnant woman. Her appearance was pretty, but the light in her eyes wasn't so friendly. "Madam, can you pray for my master? Just one blessing is enough." Einer looked at the woman in front of her, her face filled with sincerity. "I'm not in the mood. Hurry up and leave," the woman said with an unhappy expression. Then she slammed the door shut. In front of the door, Einer's expression was slightly gloomy. She bowed and sent her blessings to the child who was about to be born. Then she continued walking to the next house. "Who is it?" A man's voice rang out from the room. "A lunatic," the woman said impatiently. Not far away, under the night sky, ripples appeared in the void, and a shadow in plain white clothes appeared with his eyes closed. The heavens speaker, who rarely opened his eyes, could not help but sigh softly at this moment as he looked at the warmth and coldness of the human world. Wasn't such a heavy burden too heavy for this child? However, if she could not persevere, then the young man on her back would never wake up again. Tianyu sighed. Why was it that people would rather travel thousands of miles to worship the gods and Buddhas, who had never given them the slightest bit of help, than give a simple blessing to a kind-hearted child? The human heart was sometimes even colder and scarier than a demon. As the cold wind blew, the white shadow in the night disappeared. On the whole street, there was only a little girl carrying the unconscious red-clothed young man on her back, moving forward step by step. It was the most extravagant and filthy place in the world. Perhaps it didn't sound nice, but everyone knew and deeply believed that actors were heartless and prostitutes were disloyal. Einer walked with a phoenix on her back. Under the light, Her delicate little face was full of hardships, and her exhaustion was difficult to conceal. In a brothel, a woman in a thin garment saw this, and a hint of pity flashed through her beautiful eyes. She took a cup of hot tea from a nearby table and walked out. "Little girl, drink a cup of hot tea to warm up your body. It's free," the woman said softly as she handed over the hot tea. Air took a sip of the tea, and felt her body gradually warm up. She looked at the beautiful woman in front of her with her big eyes, and happily smiled as she said, "Thank you, big sister. Can big sister help me pray for master? Just a blessing will do." The woman looked at the unconscious red-clothed young man on the young girl's back, and a glimmer of light flashed through her beautiful eyes. She nodded and said, "Sure. Then elder sister will wish your master a speedy recovery and a peaceful life. Little sister, you too," the woman said with a gentle expression. "Thank you, elder sister. Ainer also wishes elder sister a happy life." She sincerely wished and prayed for blessings. Threads of invisible light merged into heaven and earth, merging into the woman's body. She hoped that good and evil would be repaid, and that those with kind hearts would live a happy life. Looking at the little girl's departing figure, the woman sighed softly. She turned and walked into the brothel. A smile once again appeared on her beautiful face, as she welcomed guests who came to seek pleasure. She prayed for 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. She saw the fickleness of people's hearts, and the various states of the world. The little girl saw it all clearly, and she saw it all with heartache. When kind people didn't receive good karma, and suffered for their entire lives, who would preside over justice in the world? The illusory gods and Buddhas that filled the sky never cared about the fickleness of the world. Why were people still willing to pay for the gods and Buddhas as before, and not willing to look at the people around them? Step by step, the little girl walked in the dark night, thinking hard and puzzled. Her aura quietly changed without her noticing, and her mental state rapidly rose, surpassing the 5 tribulations, surpassing the 3 tribulations, and nearing perfection. On Tianyu Peak, the heaven speaker stood in front of the apricot tree, looking at the little girl's changes in the distance. A strange expression flashed through his face. Perhaps she had found the person she had been looking for. The Tianfu planet, a sacred land full of vitality. After going through the calamity of forging the star soul-flowing fire, the Tianfu planet, that didn't grow a single blade of grass, had finally recovered after many years of recuperation. In the sacred land, a woman in a light purple dress was planting flowers and plants in places where there were no plants. The hibiscus flowers were blooming, and they were so beautiful. In the past, the phoenix body had kidnapped her and forced her to go far away. However, the phoenix body wasn't a bloodthirsty person, and in the end, it had chosen to set her free. "Mujin, the weather today is pretty good. Go and push your master out for a walk," said the Tianfu sword sovereign, who was dressed in black. "Okay." Mujin got up and nodded, then walked towards a small courtyard not far away. Not long after, Mujin pushed the wheelchair out. On the wheelchair, the unconscious Chao Tianxi was calm and peaceful. In order to protect the Tianfu planet, the Tianfu star sovereign, 1-star Morning Shi, had sacrificed his life and body to support the ice divine tower. After many years, he still hadn't woken up. The Tianfu planet, which had gone through a great calamity, was steadily recovering its vitality. Mujin pushed the wheelchair to the highest point in the sacred land, where the view was the best. "Master, look. The Tianfu planet is getting better and better," said Mujin softly as she looked at the vast mountains and rivers below. To the side, the Tianfu sword sovereign sighed softly. A great calamity had changed too many things. Fortunately, there were star sovereigns, life-knowing cultivators, and the 30 heavenly palace sovereigns. The heroes were gone, but the mountains and rivers were still there. The benevolent ones hoped that the heavens would protect them. At this moment in the sacred land, dust rose without wind, and the grass and trees swayed. An unending sword intent swept over. It didn't have any killing intent, but it made the entire sacred land lose its color. "A distinguished guest has arrived." Mu Chang'e turned around and looked at the figure walking over from afar. He narrowed his eyes. In the distance, a man in luxurious green clothes walked over steadily. Although he looked young, he had the demeanor of a grandmaster. He was clearly one of the top swordsmen in the world, and he had appeared in the Tianfu Holy Land. Behind the king was a pretty girl with a sword rack on her back. On the rack were 5 swords with different auras. They were quiet and peaceful. The legend of the Xia dynasty. Wuchang emphasized these words. It was the first time they met, but the feeling of the swords was familiar. The life-knowing swords had a similar aura. It was obvious who had taught the life-knowing swords. Xia Yin has come to worship swords. Let's go, said Prince Yin calmly as he stopped in front of the sacred land's peak. Mujin, take the star sovereigns away. The sacred land will do its best to host our distinguished guest, said Wuchang, glancing at the girl behind him. Yes. Shi Mujin agreed, and pushed Tianxi in her wheelchair into the distance. Ah man, you can leave too, said Prince Yin. Okay. A man nodded obediently. She put down the rack and walked away. Please. Prince Yin looked at the Tianfu sword sovereign and said seriously, let's go. Please. Wuchang waved his hand. In the distance, a simple but brilliant sword flew over. The divine weapon Heavenly Tower reappeared after so many years. When the sword was unsheathed, it shone brightly. The most perfect divine weapon reappeared with the sharpest radiance. Prince Yin walked to the rack and held the sword with both hands. The green and red sword was unsheathed. The sword radiance was dazzling. 8th sword, Imperial sword. Knowing that the opponent before him was different from the others, Wuchang didn't hold back. He waved the Heavenly Tower and used his ultimate move. Instantly, sword intent spread above the sacred land. The Imperial sword appeared again. The heroic aura of the sword quickly gathered in all directions. The Imperial sword made all the swords in the world submit to it. Prince Yin looked at the sword intent gathering in the sky. A smile flashed across his calm face. Finally, he met a worthy sword opponent. The Imperial sword appeared. The golden sword radiance lit up the world. The noble sword started the battle. Sword sound, flying swan. The green sword slashed down. Ice and snow shone. The sound of the sword resonated. The ice and snow turned into a radiance and rushed into the sky to meet the Imperial sword. With a rumbling sound, the swords clashed. The aftermath of the collision surged. Even though he had restrained his cultivation, only the sword light remained. It was still indescribably dazzling. Heaven and earth found it difficult to bear, rumbling and shaking. In the distance, Shi Mujin looked at the battle. She couldn't hide the shock in her beautiful eyes. It had been so many years, but this was the first time she saw a swordsman who could fight equally with the sword sovereign. In the sacred land, sword radiance shone brightly. It was fast, heavy, and strong. The black and green robes intertwined. The swords in their hands clashed continuously. The thrill of standing at the peak of the battle spread to every corner of the sacred land. 9th sword, Divine Domain. The sword intent kept rising and accumulating. The 9th sword appeared. In an instant, everything was still. Then the sword radiance shot into the sky. Heaven and earth turned into a world of swords. The Tianfu battle immortal reappeared in the divine domain. The sky was filled with thousands of swords. The most shocking sword made the world tremble. Chapter 671. In the heavenly province Holy Land, the strongest swords in the world started to fight. The divine domain on the sword spread, and the surrounding world became a world of the sword. Without beginning or end, endless sword light crisscrossed in the divine domain. The pinnacle of swords appeared again today, and it was so beautiful that it made people sink into it. In the battle, the void couldn't bear the pinnacle of swords. It dissipated for no reason, and the ground collapsed inch by inch. 100 feet away, a man and Shi Mujin retreated again, avoiding the expanding divine domain on the sword. In the sword domain, Wuchang's figure disappeared instantly. With the boost of the divine domain, his speed and sword force increased rapidly. Before he could react, the sword had already reached him. The sword was close at hand. Although it didn't have any killing intent, it was still extremely sharp. In a battle of swords there was no mercy. The red sword met it head-on. Rainbow light filled the eyes and heat waves surged. The sword that was also at the pinnacle drew a rainbow light under the setting sun, and collided with Tingtian Quebec. The two people who stood at the pinnacle of the world had reached the pinnacle of swords. Between the swords, a grand spirit existed forever. This feeling is so nostalgic. Prince Yan revealed a rare smile. The green sword gathered, and frost drifted in the air. The sword danced, breaking the heavens and sinking mountains. With a bang, the two swords collided, and waves of anger surged. In the sword domain, everything fell, and the world collapsed, turning into nothingness. The legend of Grand Xia lives up to his name. Mu Changa's expression was full of respect for his opponent. He had never seen such an opponent in his life. The two people fought in the void, and the aftermath of the battle filled the void. Ultimate martial energy spread, and the laws couldn't repair the damage of the world. The world's pinnacle sword technique, the sword domain, gradually collapsed in the aftermath. Seeing that the divine domain was about to dissipate, the scattered sword light suddenly sped back and condensed into one. 10th sword Zhu Xian. Mu Changa pointed at the sword, and his vital energy rose. A terrifying sword pressure spread out, and the void that was about to recover collapsed again. The heavenly peak of the Holy Land sank 10 feet. Zhu Xian's sword. The world was vast, and the heroic spirit of the sword gathered in the void. A simple sword appeared and slashed down from the sky. A sword that surpassed the limits descended upon the mortal realm. In the distance, the immortal extermination sword in the sword rack sensed it, and trembled continuously, wanting to break free. Prince Yan frowned slightly. He waved his hand, and the green sword returned to its scabbard. Boundless coldness surged and sealed the restless fairy-slaying sword. At this moment, above the void above, the 10th sword was about to fall. Mu Changa had no time to withdraw his move. The earth-shattering sword, with the power of destruction, descended upon the world. The celestial slaying sword calmed down. Prince Yan turned his head, and looked at the ancient sword of destruction falling from the sky. The red sword spun, and a dazzling rainbow light rose. The sword faced the sky. The two swords collided. There was an instant of silence, and then a great terror that seemed like the sky was falling, and the earth was rending. The aftershock of the destruction rapidly spread out, swallowing everything in its path. On the sacred ground, lines of formation runes quickly came to life, stabilizing the shaking mountain. Outside the battle, on the wheelchair, Chao Tianxi, who had been unconscious all this time, was affected by the boundless battle intent in the battle. His closed eyes slowly opened, and after a short period of confusion, he gradually regained his clarity. In the distance, in the collapsing world, the aftershock dissipated. A drop of blood fell from the hand of the king holding the sword, dyeing the sword red. On the opposite side, Mu Changa looked at the king's injured hand with respect. However, the sword in his hand did not stop at all. The best way to respect an opponent was to go all out and not stop halfway. The rising sword intent became more and more dazzling. The next move was the sword that would decide the outcome. Sword 11. With the sound of the 11th sword, the sword light gushed out like rain, shooting into the sky. It was dazzling. The most perfect sword, stealing the creation of the world. In an instant, within a radius of 1,000 miles, the sky lost its color. Only the sword light remained. The 11th sword appeared. In the battle, Prince Yan looked at the sky, and a strange light flashed in his calm eyes. The 11th sword is indeed a perfect move that exhausts the limits of the sword. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Prince Yan took a step forward and jumped into the sky. He clenched his left hand, and sword light shot into the sky. I have more than one sword. Green and red blades appeared, and the sand sword circled around. 3 swords in the sky, and the world changed color. 3 swords equal the heavens' life and death contract. The 3 swords circled, and turned into a huge sword storm. They kept spreading and colliding with the world's perfect sword. There was an earth-shattering collision. The 2 swords rapidly devoured each other, and a terrifying shockwave spread out. The sky above the heavenly sanctum instantly turned into a black void, swallowing all the light. The 3 swords fell and returned to the sword rack. On the other side, Heavenly Tower also fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground. A draw. Outside the battle, Shi Mujin squinted her eyes. No. Chao Tianxi slowly got up from the wheelchair and looked at the battle. The outcome has been decided. Master. Shi Mujin came back to her senses, and her beautiful face lit up. She said excitedly, You're finally awake. I made you worry. Looking back at Tianxi, she nodded gently and then walked forward. In the battle, the two people slowly descended from the sky. They withdrew their sword intent and did not attack again. Thank you, Prince Yin said seriously. You're welcome. With a wave of his hand, Heavenly Tower flew out and disappeared into the sacred palace in the distance. The legend of the Eastern region's swordsman is indeed very talented. I Chao Tianxi am impressed. The heavenly sanctum Star Venerate walked over inside. The path of the sword was difficult and rugged. To be able to walk a path that completely belonged to oneself, such a person was really terrifying. At least, after so many years, the legend of the great Xia was the first swordsman she had seen who did not cultivate any other techniques at all. He used the sword as a move and created moves with the sword. He was a genius of a generation. Heavenly Sanctum Star Venerate. Prince Yin looked at the woman in front of him and said calmly, My junior offended you in the past. I thank you on his behalf for sparing his life. No need. Chao Tianxi shook her head and said, The Jiming Marquis was able to keep his life, not because I was merciful, but because he worked hard. Moreover, the Heavenly Sanctum Star was saved because of the Jiming Marquis. He's the greatest benefactor of the Heavenly Sanctum. Oh, Prince Yen was a little surprised and said, With his strength, he was able to keep his life from the Star Venerate. It seems that the Star Venerate was badly injured when he broke the boundary of Pluto. There are gains and losses. Chao Tianxi sighed and looked at the girl not far away. She asked with a strange expression, Who is this? Ah man, the former little princess of the barbarian dynasty in the eastern region. Prince Yen said honestly. She has a clear mind and is a genius in martial arts. Chao Tianxi squinted her eyes and praised. In order to find the weakness of the Jiming Marquis, I asked someone to investigate the people around him. I've heard of this girl. She and the Jiming Marquis are a perfect couple. Unfortunately, that guy doesn't know how to cherish her. Prince Yin looked regretful, but it disappeared in a flash. He looked at the girl and said, A man, come and greet the Star Venerate. A man answered obediently. Then she went forward and bowed respectfully. She said, Greetings, Senior Star Venerate. The Star Venerate nodded and raised her hand. Wisps of origin aura gathered and pointed between the girl's eyebrows. She said softly, I don't have a chance to return the favor to the Jiming Marquis, so I'll return it to you. If you meet him in the future, please thank him for me. Okay. A man nodded and said, There's one more thing. Chao Tianxi hesitated. After thinking for a while, she said, The Jiming Marquis left a demon body to help the inner world resist the invasion of the Heaven Mansion. I noticed that the sects in the inner world were quite afraid of the Jiming Marquis, so I asked him to be careful. It's too late. Mu Chang'e said, When the Star Venerate was in a coma, I went to the inner world. Miss Qing Ning died in front of the Jiming Marquis. Now the Jiming Marquis has completely turned into a demon, and is no longer what he used to be. Sister Qing Ning is not dead. A man couldn't help but interrupt and deny it. What? Hearing this, Mu Chang'e was surprised. He asked, What happened? There are many twists and turns in this matter. It can't be explained in 1 or 2 sentences. However, now we can be sure that Qing Ning still has a chance to survive. It depends on whether her will to live is strong enough. Prince Yin said calmly. Mu Chang'e nodded slightly and said, If that's the case, the Jiming Marquis may have a chance to turn back. When we fought by the old water railing, I saw that the Jiming Marquis didn't have a trace of human emotion. He was so sad that he lost his mind. It can be seen that what happened to Miss Qing Ning was a big blow to him. The sects in the central province also paid a painful price for this. There's no need to judge who is right and who is wrong. I watched Ning Qin grow up. In terms of cultivation talent, he may not be very good, but his inner strength is incomparable to others. This blow won't knock him down. At least, before the Rakshasa girl of the netherworld wakes up, he has to continue on his path Prince Yin replied. The Jiming Marquis once asked me about the way to bring the dead back to life. In fact, we all know the truth. There's absolutely no way to bring people back to life in the world. I'm worried that in the end, the Jiming Marquis will find that his path is in vain. How painful will that be? Chao Tianxi sighed softly. It's okay. Prince Yin opened his mouth and said, Ning Chen is smarter than anyone else. What the world knows, he knows better than anyone else. The path of cultivation has always been against the heavens. Perhaps at the end of this path, there are still realms that we don't know of, just like that Pluto. Isn't it also unacceptable that there are gods in the human world? Is he looking forward to a miracle? I hope the miracle he's looking for really exists. Chao Tianxi sincerely wished. Prince Yin nodded and said, The matter here has been settled. I won't disturb you anymore. I'll take my leave first. See you again if fate wills it. Goodbye. Chao Tianxi and Mu Chang'e nodded and didn't stay for long. Beside them, Man carried the sword rack on his back and followed the senior out of the heavenly province Holy Land. They didn't leave a trace of dust behind them, just like when they came. Looking at the two's receding figures, Mu Chang'e looked at the Star Venerable beside him and said, Since the Star Venerable has woken up, my task is over. I hope the Star Venerable will allow me to leave for a few days. Okay. Chao Tianxi sighed and said, Go ahead. Mu Chang'e took one last look at the figure in the distance. Then he stepped forward and turned into a flowing light that disappeared into the deepest part of the heavenly province Holy Land. Master, the sword Venerable doesn't look right. Shi Mujin walked over with a puzzled look in his eyes. The 11th sword was defeated. Chao Tianxi sighed softly and said, If I'm not wrong, Chang'e left this time to prepare for the 12th sword with all his strength. Chapter 672. In this world of ice and snow, the little girl walked alone. She still hadn't woken up. She didn't know how long she had walked, or how many people she had bowed to, but she hadn't stopped for even a moment. Her clothes were soaked with sweat, and her forehead was dyed red with blood. The winter wind was bone-chilling. She hadn't slept or rested for many days. Even though she had entered the Xiantian realm, she gradually couldn't hold on. With each step she took, her delicate body would stagger. Not far away in the village, the clanging sound of iron striking could be heard, one after another. The little girl raised her head and looked ahead. There wasn't much light in her eyes. After a few more steps, her consciousness suddenly blurred, and she silently fell into the snow. In the village, in front of the blacksmith's shop, the little boy who was chopping firewood saw this and immediately ran over. Mother, someone fainted. Seeing the two unconscious figures in the snow, the little boy's immature face became anxious. He shouted towards the house behind him. Not long after he finished speaking, a woman walked out of a house not far away. When she saw the two figures lying in the snow in front of the village, she turned around and said, Father, someone has really fainted. Quickly go and take a look. In the house, an honest-looking middle-aged man put down his hammer and immediately looked outside. It's a little girl and a young man. When the middle-aged man saw this, he didn't dare to delay any longer. He quickly walked out and called out, Mother, come and help. Okay. The woman threw down the things in her hands and quickly followed. In the snow, the blood on the unconscious girl's forehead could still be seen. She had bowed to countless people and begged countless families just to pray for blessings. The man carried the red-robed young man on his back and helped the woman and boy lift the girl up. He carefully walked towards the village. In the house, a fire was burning. It was very warm inside, a sharp contrast to the cold outside. The man and woman helped the two unconscious people lie down on the bed inside the house. Then they quickly brought hot water to warm up their bodies. Call the doctor over. The woman looked at the two young people on the bed and couldn't help but say, Yes, please. The man hesitated for a moment but still nodded. I'll call the doctor. Hearing this, the little boy jogged out of the house and ran into the village. Not long after, an old man in a green robe was dragged in by the little boy. After entering the house, he let out a long sigh. Dr. Li, quickly take a look at these two children, the woman said with a worried expression. That depends. The old man put down the medicine box and walked forward. He took the pulse of the two people one by one. His old face couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. What a strange pulse. How is it? The man asked. This young lady is fine. She's just exhausted from running around for a long time. She'll recover after resting for a few days. However, this young man's pulse. At this point, the old man gently shook his head and said, This is not the pulse that an ordinary person should have. Or rather, this is not the pulse that a living person should have. In Emo Planet, 3 figures stood respectfully in front of the platform of the Legacy Summit. The 5th Summit, 6th Summit and 7th Summit, the 3 Summit Masters were all present, quietly waiting to receive their orders. Old 5. On the Dao platform, Emoju lightly said, How long have you been in the sect? 300 years, Chi Huan said respectfully. So it's been so long. A trace of emotion flashed through Emoju's old eyes. Looking at the various peaks that had already become empty, he said, How's your cultivation of the immortal technique I taught you? This disciple's aptitude is lacking. I'm still unable to comprehend the essence of the immortal technique. Chi Huan lowered his head and replied. Hearing this, Emoju slightly frowned and said, Come forward. Chi Huan raised his head and took a step forward, walking to the Dao platform. Emoju raised his hand, and a 7-colored brilliance shone. An ancient and primordial power continuously poured into Chi Huan's body. It was vast and boundless. A terrifying pressure caused the entire Emo mountain to shake. Ugh! An extremely painful groan sounded. Blood flowed from the corner of Chi Huan's mouth. It was difficult for him to bear the might of the immortal technique entering his body. The dazzling 7-colored brilliance became brighter and brighter. Chi Huan's aura also became stronger and stronger. He broke through the limits of the void realm and stepped into the corporeal realm. Blood scattered between heaven and earth. The price of forcefully raising his cultivation was also unbearable. Chi Huan's body constantly trembled and was bathed in blood. After a quarter of an hour, Emoju withdrew his hand and his aura. Looking at the person in front of him, he calmly said, Go. Don't disappoint your master. Yes. Chi Huan's body was still trembling. He stood up with difficulty and immediately turned to walk down the legacy peak. A trace of sorrow flashed in the eyes of the 6th and 7th Peaks Masters as they silently lowered their heads. True Martial Planet, in the boundless wilderness, there was a lonely city. It was completely destroyed by the war hundreds of years ago. Now no one lived in it. In the city, Purple Marquis quietly waited in a dilapidated mansion. There was only one person in the huge city. Xiang Yuan had yet to return. Luluwa went out to look for medicine as usual, leaving Zichuan to guard the stronghold. After waiting for a few days, Purple Marquis's face gradually showed impatience. His aura became restless, and his heart was filled with irritation. At this moment, dark clouds rolled in the sky above the city and thunder rumbled. Amidst the shocking pressure, an azure-clothed figure appeared and slowly descended. Purple Marquis looked at the figure that appeared in the sky. He was startled and shocked. How did he find this place? Zichuan, come back with me. Chi Huan landed on the ground, and a boundless pressure spread out. The entire city collapsed with a bang. The mountain sank and the ground fell. I can't do it. Purple Marquis's expression sank. Then die. Chi Huan took a step forward and condensed Yuan with a flip of his palm. This sudden killing move came without any warning. Purple Marquis focused and waved his hand. A violet sword appeared and blocked Chi Huan's palm. Purple Marquis's palm split open, and blood sprayed out. He was forced back several steps, blood flowing out of his arm. Impossible. How can you have such a cultivation base? Purple Marquis's expression sank. I'll say it again. Come back with me, said Chi Huan. Impossible. Purple Marquis stepped forward, his sword once more opening the chapter of life and death. Their palms and swords collided, each of them a prelude to death. Although their gazes seemed emotionless, tears of blood fell from their hearts. The desolate city had been turned into ruins by their battle. Dust and boulders flew everywhere, blocking the sun. There was no doubt that he had once been like him. He knew that he had also been unable to control himself. While Zichuan's heart ached, The light on his sword grew faster and faster. He had to survive, he had to survive. Qi Huan's face was emotionless, and he didn't show any mercy. Each of his moves was earth-shattering. The battle was more intense than he had imagined. Purple Marquis was even more shocked. He raised his sword's power to the limit to contend with his opponent. Ugh! With a muffled groan, Qi Huan's palm broke through the sword and landed on Purple Marquis's chest. He was forced back several steps, his mouth red. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, Purple Marquis raised his left hand and condensed yuan. Rays of sword light wrapped around his sword, and an immortal art appeared. Immortal art, purple rainbow piercing the sun. Immortal techniques were unleashed, and purple rainbows filled the sky. Sword intent filled the air, splitting the sky and splitting the sea. Qi Huan narrowed his eyes. Zichuan, a true immortal art should be like this. 7 rainbow bearing the sun. Qi Huan raised his hand, and the power of laws within 100 miles crazily surged. An illusory divine sun appeared in the void in front of him. It instantly shattered and devoured the person in front of him. The rainbow-colored and purple rainbows collided, and a terrifying shockwave rushed out. The terrifying power instantly annihilated the surrounding void and blasted everything within 100 miles. In the shockwave, Purple Marquis flew out. Blood splattered like rain, and he was in a sorry state. Demon descends. Without hesitation, Purple Marquis stopped. Black qi rose from his body, and violent black waves rose endlessly. In the black qi, Zichuan's face quickly changed. Demonic runes crisscrossed, and the pupils in his pale eyes disappeared. It was unusually eerie, and it made people feel a chill in their hearts. In the next moment, 100 feet tall demonic shadow appeared, and a majestic demonic aura penetrated the ground. With the demonic soul in his body, Purple Marquis's internal injuries were suppressed. He moved his feet, and his figure disappeared instantly. The sword fell, and the demonic shadow behind him punched at the same time. Wherever the demonic aura and sword momentum passed, the void collapsed and turned into nothingness. Qi Huan narrowed his eyes, and a rainbow-colored brilliance gathered on his palm, blocking the incoming attack. With a roar that could split the sky and the sea, the two retreated together. Blood stained their clothes. Immortal art shocking rainbow. Before the shockwave dissipated, a rainbow-colored light flashed, breaking through space and instantly arriving in front of Qi Huan. Purple Marquis swung his sword to block, but suddenly, his body became sluggish, and he couldn't use his true yuan. How is this possible? Qi Huan was caught off guard, and it was too late to react. The rainbow-colored light pierced through his body, dyeing his eyes red. When the dust settled, a white-robed figure silently disappeared. The figure fell to the ground, his blood staining the ground. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and shock. Even in death, he couldn't close his eyes in peace. Not far away, Qi Huan looked at the figure lying in a pool of blood. The grief in his eyes could no longer be concealed. The moment he turned around, tears welled up in his eyes. I hope we don't meet again in the next life. With that, Qi Huan left, disappearing under the setting sun. A cold wind blew, and dust flew up, covering the souls of the deceased. Zichuan, Mo Gate's 7th disciple, had luckily survived 100 years ago. But 100 years later, he still couldn't avoid death. The sorrow of killing one another was no exception to Mo Gate's 9th disciple. The sun set, and the cold moon gradually rose. Green light gathered in the distance. Lulua, who had returned from searching for herbs, looked at the city in the distance. Suddenly, her body fiercely trembled. Zichuan! His silhouette flashed as he rushed forward. Within the collapsed residence, Zichuan was covered in dust. Only his eyes were filled with unwillingness. He looked up at the sky, as if he was complaining about the unfairness of the heavens. Zichuan ugh! Lulua was filled with grief and pain. Seeing this unbelievable scene, she took 2 steps forward, her body constantly trembling. Lulua, who was kneeling on the ground, was no longer able to maintain her calm. Tears fell one drop after another, falling into the dust. She had once treated him harshly and scolded him time and time again. This was the senior sister's anger towards her junior brother, for failing to live up to her expectations. However, in this world, they were each other's last family. How could she really not care about him? A cold wind blew, chilling to the bone. The wind was filled with sorrowful cries. Chapter 673. Li Family Village. After being in a coma for a day, Einar woke up. She shook her dizzy little head and was shocked when she saw the little boy in front of her. "Mother, that sister is awake." Seeing this, the little boy's tender little face lit up. He ran out of the house and shouted outside. Not long after, the woman followed the little boy into the house. Seeing the girl sitting up on the bed, she smiled gently and said, "You're awake. Where is this?" Einar looked out of the window and asked in confusion. "Li Family Village." The woman said softly, "You fainted at the entrance of the village, so the child's father and I brought you back." Einar looked at the red-clothed figure who was still sleeping beside her. Her beautiful big eyes flashed with sadness. After a moment, she hid it deep in her heart and smiled brightly at the woman. "Thank you. You're welcome. Oh right, you must be hungry after being unconscious for so long. I'll get you something to eat." After saying that, the woman walked out of the house and scooped some porridge from the stove on the other side of the house. She carefully handed it to the girl who had just woken up. Einar took the porridge and tasted it. She smiled happily and said, "It's delicious. Eat more if it's delicious. There's still a lot in the pot." The woman said gently, "Okay." Einar nodded and replied softly, "Sister, who is the person beside you? What illness does he have?" The little boy looked at the red-clothed young man who was still unconscious and asked in confusion. Hearing this, Einar's hand paused. She said in low spirits, "He's my master. He's injured, so he can't wake up for the time being." "Then your master's injuries are really serious." Dr. Li in the village said that his pulse is very strange. "It's not like a normal person's pulse," the little boy said with a worried expression. Einar calmed herself down and smiled gently. "It's okay. Master's injuries will be healed soon. At that time, he'll be able to wake up." "Oh." The little boy nodded as if he understood and replied. Einar finished the porridge and moved her numb legs. She then got off the bed and walked out of the house. In the outer room, the man who was the head of the family was not at home. At noon, he took the finished farming tools and delivered them to the villagers. Only the woman was busy in the outer room, cleaning the dust next to the stove. "Let me help." Einar went forward and took the broom. After sweeping it a few times, her face was covered in dust. When the woman saw this, she smiled and said, "Let me do it. I can tell that you've never done this at home before." Einar was a little embarrassed as she scratched her little nose. In the past, it was her mother and master who took care of her. She was indeed not very good at such things. "I just heard that the young man is your master. The injury on his body may not be easy to treat." Dr. Li in the village is the best doctor in the area, but he can't do anything. "You may have to go to a bigger place to find a better doctor," the woman said softly. Einar nodded and did not explain further. Ordinary people had ordinary lives, and she did not want to disturb them. "Your body has just recovered. Don't walk around outside for too long. Go back to your room and rest." The woman saw the little girl standing by the side and tried to persuade her. "I'm fine now. Right, how should I address you?" Einar asked. "Just call me Aunt Li. This is the Li family village. Most of the people in the village have the surname Li. The child's father will come back after delivering the farming tools to the villagers. At that time, ask your Uncle Li to kill an old hen for you to nourish your body," the woman said gently. "Thank you, Aunt Li." Einar smiled sweetly. Not long after, the middle-aged man returned from delivering the farming tools. When he saw the little girl standing in the room, he was stunned at first, but then he revealed a simple and honest smile and said, "Little girl, you're awake." "I mean her." The little girl smiled. "Child's father, go kill an old hen for this child to nourish her body." The woman looked at the man and said, "And I'll go now." The man responded, and immediately put down the farming tools that he had not delivered, and walked towards the chicken coop in the courtyard. "I'll go take a look," Einar said and curiously followed him. However, not long after, the little girl walked back with a pale face. Clearly, She was not used to the scene of killing a chicken. Seeing this, the woman smiled. This little girl was clearly a child of a rich family. Her hands were not stained with oil at all. When dinner was being prepared, Ina watched from the side and asked about this and that. She was not shy. The woman gently explained everything without any impatience. On the side, the little boy eagerly looked at the old hen stewing in the pot. His tender little face was filled with desire. Xiao Yuan, there's not enough firewood. Go chop some more. Seeing that there was not much firewood left in front of the stove, the woman looked at the little boy and said, "Okay." The little boy obediently responded. Then, he wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth and ran out of the house. "I'll go help," Ina said in a sweet voice and also ran out. Child's mother, this is the money for the farming tools. There are a few villagers who really can't give it now, so let's owe it first. The man entered the house and took out some copper coins. The woman sighed softly and said, "It's not easy. If you can help, then help. With such heavy snow this year, I don't think there will be a good harvest next year. Why does God always not let us commoners live a good life?" Outside the house, the little boy was chopping firewood with a hatchet. Children who were not yet 10 years old did not have much strength. Especially now that it was winter, the firewood was frozen solid. Therefore, the little boy chopped very strenuously. One piece of firewood needed to be chopped a few times before it was split. "Let me try." Ina saw and volunteered. The little boy handed over the hatchet without much trust and reminded in a childish voice, "The firewood is very hard. Be careful." "Okay." Ina took the hatchet and responded. She walked to the front, took a piece of firewood, and placed it on the ground. Then she chopped it with the hatchet. With a bang, the firewood split into pieces and flew all over the courtyard. Ina and the little boy beside her were shocked. They looked at each other and could not react for a moment. In the house, the woman and the man heard the noise and hurried out to see what had happened. When they saw the hatchet in the little girl's hand and the firewood scattered in the courtyard, they could not help but smile helplessly. This girl was very strong. Ina threw the hatchet and hurriedly picked up the firewood scattered in the courtyard. She smiled embarrassedly and explained, "I'm not used to it just now. Be careful. Don't hurt yourself." The woman reminded her and immediately returned to the house to continue cooking. I don't know where this little girl came from, but she dares to run around in this world of ice and snow by herself. Furthermore, the world is so chaotic right now. What if she runs into bad people? I heard that this child came out to seek medical treatment for her master. Look at her forehead, there's so much blood. She must have asked a lot of people for help along the way, said the woman in front of the stove as she cooked. This little girl is very likely not an ordinary person. Just now, when she went to the village to deliver the farm tools, she ran into Dr. Li. He said that the young man on her back is very likely to be the same as those consecrators of our dynasty. He's some great cultivator, said the man. The woman was stunned and then said in disbelief, "That's impossible. That young man only looks to be in his 20s. Legend has it that those consecrators are all old immortals with the demeanor of sages." "I don't know either." The man shook his head and said, "However, Dr. Li once stayed in the imperial city when he was young. He's experienced and knowledgeable. He definitely has his reasons for saying that." "So that means that little girl is the disciple of a great cultivator? No wonder she's so strong. However, other than being a little stronger, I can't see any difference between this child and an ordinary person. Aren't those cultivators all very difficult to get along with?" asked the woman. "Perhaps we saved her. Or perhaps this little girl has a kind heart to begin with," replied the man. As the two of them spoke, Ina and the boy walked in with firewood. They placed the firewood in front of the stove. Snowflakes drifted all over their bodies. Seeing this, the woman took a linen cloth from the side and brushed off the snow on the two of them. She looked at the man and helplessly smiled. How could a little girl like this be a cultivator? Outside the room, the sky gradually darkened. It was already impossible to see what was happening outside. Within the room, the fragrance of a stewed hen filled the room. Ina and the boy were unable to move their eyes away from it. "Why don't we invite Dr. Li over as well?" He's helped us quite a bit these past few years, asked the woman. Yes. The man nodded and looked at the boy. Little Yuan, go call him over. All right. The boy nodded and ran out before the sky was completely dark. Einer, go wash your hands. It's time to eat. The woman looked at the little girl beside the stove. Yes. Einer went outside to wash her hands before returning to help bring out the food. The food was very sumptuous. Ordinary people would only be able to eat meat a few times a year. They would only be able to eat it during festivals. This time, it was because of Einer that they had made an exception and killed an old hen that they had raised for many years. Outside the house, the little boy returned amidst the wind and snow. He pulled the green-robed elder into the house with him, his clothes stained with quite a bit of snow. The old man brushed off the snow on his body and looked at the woman and man in the room. It's already so late. Sorry for disturbing you. Dr. Li is too courteous. Come warm yourself by the fire and warm yourself up, said the man. The old man nodded and walked in front of the fire. He warmed up his frozen hands and looked at the little girl who had brought out the food. Oh, you woke up so quickly? Thank you for saving me, Dr. Li. Einer smiled sweetly. No need. I didn't do anything. The old man shook his head and hesitated for a moment before asking, Little girl, who is that youth to you? He's my master, said Einer honestly. A strange light flashed through the old man's eyes. As expected, this little girl was no ordinary person. Inside the room, the unconscious Hong Yi was still motionless on the bed. This was the first time in 30 years that she had stopped walking. Chapter 674. In a warm room, the five of them sat around a table and ate. An ordinary family didn't have as many rules as a large family, so the atmosphere was much warmer. Dr. Li was already very old, and he didn't eat much. What he liked the most was this lively atmosphere. The little boy and Einer were each gnawing on a chicken leg. Their mouths were oily, making them look a bit funny. The woman would occasionally fill their bowls with food. She was very considerate of the pretty, but somewhat stupid little girl. People's hearts were made of flesh. For such a kind child to go out on her own was too pitiful. Seeing that there was more and more food in the bowl, Einer smiled at the woman and continued to eat the chicken drumsticks. Outside the room, the snowstorm was growing stronger. The weather was always colder than one could imagine. After dinner, Einer helped the woman clean up the table. Dr. Li got up and prepared to leave. The man sent him off, but it was already too late. Furthermore, the snowstorm was too strong. It was too dangerous for an old man to return by himself. After cleaning up the table, Einer looked at the woman and asked, Aunt Li, are there many people in this village? There should be around 100 households. What's wrong? A very, very powerful senior told me that as long as there are enough people praying for Master will be able to wake up. Tomorrow, I want to go to the village to ask the villagers to pray for Master, said Einer softly. The woman thought about it and nodded. I'll go with you tomorrow. After all, you're not from this village. With me, the villagers will be easier to talk to. Thank you, Aunt Li, said Einer gratefully. It's just a small matter. The woman warmly smiled. For someone your age to not be afraid of hardship and carry your master everywhere to pray for blessings, you're a thoughtful child. It's only right for you to help out. On planet Jinwu, there was a ruined city in the wilderness. 100 miles outside the city, Lulua stood in front of Zichuan's tomb. Her beautiful face was filled with grief. They had depended on each other for hundreds of years. She had never thought that they would be separated forever. After standing there for a long time, space shook and a man in scarlet battle robes walked out. When he saw the woman and the tombstone in front of her, his eyes shook. Why is it like this? Xiang Yuan took 2 steps forward with a pained expression. Emo Gates people found this place. According to the traces of the battle, it was Qi Huan who did it, said Lulua. Qi Huan? How can he be so capable? Xiang Yuan asked in disbelief. Perhaps that old fellow used some sort of secret technique. Or perhaps there's a secret we don't know about. Although Zichuan's strength wasn't a match for that old fellow, it wasn't a world of difference. But this time, it seems that Zichuan still isn't Qi Huan's match. Perhaps we've always misjudged that old fellow's abilities, said Lulua. True realm. Xiang Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, It doesn't seem like it. If there really was such a big gap, we would have died at his hands long ago. We wouldn't have waited until today. Even I can't guess what the truth is. The only thing I'm certain of is that that old fellow is already preparing to attack us. You, me, and junior apprentice brother will all be in danger, said Lulua. Xiang Yuan nodded and said, Let's leave as soon as possible and find junior apprentice brother as soon as possible. There are too many strange things about Zichuan's death. No matter how fast Qi Huan's strength increases, it's impossible for him to kill the late corporeal realm Zichuan by himself. So if that old fellow wants to get rid of us, he'll definitely do it himself. However, junior apprentice brother will really be in trouble. If Qi Huan chooses to attack him, junior apprentice brother will find it very difficult to escape. Yes, Lulua nodded and took one last look at the tombstone in front of her. Clenching her fists, she turned and left. In the Li family village, snow fell for an entire night. The next day, the snow gradually lessened. However, the weather was still cold and the cold wind blew past. It was so cold that no one dared to stretch out their hands. Behind her master's back, Ina went from house to ask for blessings. The woman and little boy followed beside her. When they came across people who were really difficult to talk to, they would go up and say a few good words to ask for blessings for the little girl's master. 1 house, 2 houses, 5 houses, 10 houses. The weather was cold and the ground was frozen. The snow had sealed off the roads. After walking for a long time, it became more and more difficult to walk. Ina walked at the front without resting for even a moment. The woman followed behind her and sighed in her heart. No wonder this little girl had fainted in front of the village. Even if her body could take it, her mind couldn't. Ina seemed to have forgotten that the woman was still following behind her. Behind her master's back, she knocked on the doors of each house and prayed for every possible blessing. In the past, Ningchen had said that men had gold under their knees. Apart from their parents, they shouldn't kneel to anyone else. Women and men were no different. In this unequal world, if they couldn't treat themselves as equal to men, they would never be able to obtain equal opportunities. Ningchen had taught her this, and the little girl had followed suit. Ever since she had taken him as her master, she no longer knelt to anyone. It was the same for the emperors of the mortal world, the gods and Buddhas of heaven and earth. However, ever since she had walked down from Tianyu Peak, the little girl had cast this dignity behind her. She begged and bowed to everyone she met, all for the sake of praying for the person behind her. In this world, there would always be someone who was worth abandoning everything for. To Ina, the person behind her was such a person. As long as he could wake up, even if she knelt 1,000 times or begged 10,000 times, it would be worth it. The coldness in the snow was unusually bone-piercing. From dawn to noon, and then to the blazing sun heading west, the woman and little boy came back after returning home. When they saw the fresh blood on the snow where the little girl had stood up, they couldn't help but tremble. The wound on the little girl's forehead that hadn't healed, yet flowed with blood again, dyeing the snow red. Not every house was so easy to talk to. There were all kinds of people in the world, and everyone's character was different. It had nothing to do with status or background. Among the rich, there were benevolent people who helped the world. Among the poor, there were also unruly people with despicable characters. Praying for a blessing, just a blessing, was so difficult. Ina threw away her personal emotions. She was neither sad nor happy, neither resentful nor hateful. She continued to do what she had done for the past 100 days. She begged and bowed to everyone she met. In the village, Dr. Li stood in front of the door and looked at the little girl in the distance. His old eyes constantly flickered with a strange light. Back when he was practicing medicine in the imperial city, he had heard an elder say that the faith, blessings, and mental power of all living beings were the most immeasurable powers in the world. Even grand cultivators, and the emperor of the imperial dynasty, didn't dare to underestimate them. However, although these powers were powerful, not everyone could use them. Even the consecrators of the imperial family might not be able to do it. Moreover, all living beings were weak. Only when tens of thousands of people prayed together would it truly have a great effect. The little girl in front of him was clearly collecting the blessings of all living beings for her master. From this, it could be seen that the young man was definitely not an ordinary person. Even among grand cultivators, it was extremely likely that he was someone who stood at the peak. Einar didn't know, and Dr. Lee also didn't know. At this moment, a green figure walked out from the horizon. Looking at the red-clothed young man below, a hint of struggle appeared on his face. He didn't know what had happened to his little junior brother. But right now, his little junior brother was clearly no different from a living corpse. Fifth junior brother, let's do it. Another two figures walked out from Horizon Mountain and looked at the person beside them. The masters of Mo Gate's 5th, 6th, and 7th peaks had all arrived. This was a lineup that they couldn't even appear to deal with Zichuan. Today, in order to kill the traitor of the 9th peak, they had all appeared in the Lee family village. Little junior brother is no different from being dead right now. Let's just let him go this time, said Chi Huan, clenching his fists. Fifth senior brother, it's no wonder you still don't understand. Whether little junior brother is dead or alive isn't important. What's important is the extreme young energy within his body, said the 6th peak's master. Don't hesitate anymore. Let's do it, said the 7th peak's master indifferently. Then he took a step forward and walked down. At this moment, the meditating heaven's speaker on the distant heavenly word peak suddenly trembled. She stood up and looked to the west with a frown. Mo Gates people? Crap, they're in danger. Space churned as the heaven's speaker stepped forward to help. Suddenly, 7 colors gathered in the sky, and a white-robed figure appeared. Looking at the woman who was about to leave, he calmly said, Heaven's speaker, there's no need for you to interfere in my Mo Gates' internal affairs. Seeing the white-robed figure appear in the sky, even the heaven's speaker's expression became grave. Mo Master, must you be so ruthless? Betraying the sect, deceiving the master, and killing the ancestors. I think that such a great crime is unforgivable even in any great sect, said Mo Master indifferently. I won't beat around the bush. Ever since Mo Master started cultivating the 7-color immortal art and the yin-yang immortal art, you've sacrificed more than 1 or 2 disciples. Today, Mo Master already has half a foot in the true realm. As long as you focus on cultivating, it's only a matter of time before you take that half a step. Why do you have to sacrifice these innocent children? Sacrifice? Mo Master looked into the distance. Heaven Speaker, you're wrong. Other than my 9th son, I haven't sacrificed anyone else. It's said that Heaven Speaker can communicate with heaven and earth and know everything in the world. Now it seems that isn't completely true. The Heaven Speaker frowned once more. Not willing to say anything more, he flipped his hands, and the wind and snow on the heavenly word peak began to spin, forming a cage that sealed the white-robed elder in the sky. Heaven Speaker, it really wasn't my intention to fight with you. Forgive me. With that said, Mo Zhu raised his hand, and the 7-colored brilliance crisscrossed and streaked across the sky, scattering the wind and snow that had gathered. Mo Gates' master is truly hiding his strength. The Heaven Speaker sighed softly. Without wasting any more time, he slowly opened his star-like eyes. In an instant, wind and clouds surged, and the sky lost its color. Mo Master's expression became unprecedentedly grave. Black and white light converged on his illusory figure. The power of yin and yang condensed from nothingness. Immortal art, yin-yang perfect perfection. With a raise of his hand, a black moon descended, black and white intertwined, revealing a flaw within the perfection. The reappearance of the yin-yang immortal art froze heaven and earth. An indescribable power of law rapidly rose around the Heaven Speaker, as if it wanted to tear the woman's body apart. Chapter 675. On the heavenly word peak, the 2 strongest people in the world fought with their full strength. Immortal techniques and spiritual energy of heaven and earth intertwined, shocking the world. There was no need to say anything, as words would only be quibbling. There was no explanation, as explanations would only be excuses. The shockwaves that shook the world were the greatest terror in the world. The yin-yang immortal technique split heaven and earth. A black moon appeared and sealed the void. A terrifying tearing force pressed down on the woman without mercy. The heaven speaker looked at the black moon. It was like the starry sky. She raised her hand, and streams of light gathered. Boundless spiritual energy rolled and annihilated the black moon. The two terrifying forces collided, and the shockwaves rippled out. Rumbling sounds echoed throughout the sky above the heavenly word peak. Even thousands of miles away, the terrifying aura could be felt. The sky lost its color. The shockwaves stirred the sky into nothingness. The shockwaves became more and more shocking. Within 1,000 miles, all living things prostrated themselves. They didn't dare to breathe loudly for fear of alarming the immortals in the sky. After exchanging several moves, the other party could clearly see that Emoju and the Heaven Speaker's bodies were shining brightly. The Heaven Speaker lives up to her name. The yin-yang immortal technique was completely neutralized for the first time. Emoju's expression became serious. The Heaven Speaker looked into the distance, and a glimmer of light flashed through her extremely beautiful eyes. She had to hurry, otherwise those two children would really be in danger. It's too late. Give up. Emoju saw through her thoughts. Crossing heavenly light. The Heaven Speaker didn't say much. She raised her hand, and the wind and clouds around her moved. The sea of clouds separated, and the heavenly light appeared. In an instant, the entire world was set ablaze. Emoju's figure flashed. He stepped into the heavenly light, avoiding the flames of the heavens. Awakening, 7 rainbow berries the sun. The heavenly light was unavoidable. Emoju stopped. 7 colored light surged around him, turning into rays of rainbow light that protected him, blocking the awakening heavenly light. The heavenly light was endless, and the 7-colored brilliance was also endless. The confrontation of the strongest in the world stirred up a dazzling rainbow light under the setting sun. Emoju's master was unfathomable, and the Heaven Speaker who had opened her eyes was even more extraordinary. She was unrivaled in the world. Rumbling sounds of battle resounded through heavenly speech peak, stirring up endless layers of snow. It was so beautiful, adding a hint of sadness to this world-shocking great battle. Immortal technique, joys and sorrows. Emoju raised his hand, unleashing an immortal spell to save the world. A might capable of destroying heaven and earth appeared. A black moon and a white sun appeared, descending upon the world. In an instant, yin and yang intersected, and were annihilated at the same time. The extreme immortal technique descended. The Heaven Speaker's eyes flashed with a brilliant light. His fingers twirled as he chanted an incantation, drawing the power of the blazing sun to his body. An unshakable defense blocked the might of the immortal technique. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the two poles were annihilated at the same time. Terrifying aftershocks swept out rapidly, causing expanse after expanse of heaven and earth to collapse, and everything was turned into nothingness under this terrifying heavenly might. A huge black cavity appeared in the sky, crazily devouring the surrounding wind, snow and light. The shocking scene continued to spread, surpassing the might of an expert, surpassing what the world could bear. Drops of blood dripped down, dyeing the wind and snow red. The blood at the corner of Emoju's mouth was hard to conceal. His aura became unstable. He looked at the Heaven Speaker in front of him, and sighed in his heart. It seemed that even his incarnation couldn't stop this terrifying existence. The Heaven Speaker was indeed worthy of being the person closest to the gods in the mortal world. Time was getting more and more pressing. Outside the void, the Heaven Speaker didn't want to delay any longer. He flipped his hands, and his aura rose rapidly. Speaking with the heavens, thunder could be faintly heard, and the heavenly punishment appeared again. Doomsday heavenly punishment, heaven's judgment. In an instant, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Looking back, everything within 1,000 miles had turned into a world of thunder and lightning. Rumbling thunder and lightning descended, swallowing everything within. It was an indescribably shocking scene. In the doomsday heavenly punishment, nothing existed, and the Heaven Speaker killed. It was as if the world was angry, and the destructive thunder and lightning purified all the filth in the mortal world, leaving no trace of life. In the thunder and lightning, Emoju's solid body turned illusory again. The yin and yang aura gradually dissipated, and he couldn't hold on anymore. Heaven's speaker, I admire today's battle. I look forward to the moment of life and death in the future. As he spoke, Emoju's incarnation dissipated, gradually disappearing between heaven and earth. Looking at the disappearing figure in the thunder and lightning, the Heaven's speaker waved his hand to disperse the heavenly punishment. Exhaustion flashed through his beautiful eyes, and after a moment he slowly closed his eyes. His divine sense swept past the black-robed man, who was still undergoing the demonic test, under the apricot tree. Without further delay, he stepped forward and quickly rushed towards the west. In the sky above the Li family village, dark clouds rolled. Emo Gate's 3 peak masters appeared. In order to kill the traitorous 9th peak master, Emo Gate had sent out their strongest lineup, leaving no way out. Emoju's orders couldn't be disobeyed, and the 3 of them had no choice. The 7th peak master slowly descended from the sky. Looking at the figure on the back of the little girl not far away, a trace of helplessness flashed through his eyes. Wen Air, who was praying for Ningchen everywhere, sensed the arrival of a strong cultivator. Her delicate body trembled. Looking at the figure behind her, panic appeared on her beautiful little face. Air, leave 9th junior brother to me, said the 7th peak master softly. No. Air retreated a few steps. Looking at the person in front of her, she pleaded. 7th senior brother. Ningchen can't wake up anymore. Please let him go. At this moment, Qi Huan and the 6th peak master also descended from the sky. Looking at the little girl who was constantly retreating, they both sighed in their hearts. 5th senior brother, I beg of you, please let us go this time. Seeing Qi Huan appear, Air looked over and begged him. Not far away, seeing the 3 immortals descending from the sky, the people of the Li family village all trembled. They were so nervous that they didn't dare to move. The woman and the little boy who were closest to them were also shocked. Although they were somewhat prepared, when they saw it for themselves, they still felt that it was unreal. I'm sorry. I can agree to any other request, but not this one. Hearing the little girl's request, Qi Huan sighed softly. Hardening his heart, he shook his head and stepped forward. His powerful aura constantly filled the air, powerful and oppressive. Seeing this, Air didn't say anything and turned to run. You can't escape. With a soft voice, Qi Huan's figure flashed and instantly blocked her path. He raised his hand and grabbed the red-robed young man on the little girl's back. Bang! At this moment, spiritual light flashed around Air's body. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth automatically protected her, blocking the former's hand. Qi Huan was slightly surprised. Confusion flashed in his eyes. He increased the true essence in his hand and pushed the little girl away. What's going on? Asked the 6th peak master, puzzled. There's something strange about this child, replied Qi Huan. Then don't be merciful. Snatch it by force to prevent any accidents from happening, said the 6th peak master with a serious expression. I'll trap her. You guys go and snatch him. Don't hurt her. Just take junior brother away. Qi Huan said as he raised his right hand. A terrifying force spread out and sealed off the surrounding area. The 7th peak master stepped forward and reached out to grab the young man on the little girl's back. His vast true essence surged. Air's face was filled with anxiety. She broke free from the bindings and quickly rushed towards the sky. Strange. Seeing this, Qi Huan frowned. What was going on with this little girl? She could actually break free from his bindings time and time again. Old 6th. Qi Huan said as he looked at the 6th peak master beside him. Yes. The 6th peak master nodded. The blue light around him flourished. Immediately, the space in the sky condensed like a swamp, making it difficult to move. The space changed, and the little girl's body was once again bound, making it difficult for her to move. Mother. In the village, the little boy tugged at the woman beside him and said anxiously, We can't do anything when immortals fight. The woman's expression was filled with worry and helplessness. Anyone could tell that these people were here to capture Air and the young man. Moreover, these people's strength was far from what the little girl could contend against. In the sky, Air's body was bound, and panic appeared on her face. However, the magical force did not appear again, and she could not move even half a step. Huan looked at the sky and roughly understood that Air might have a magical force on her body, but she could not control it. Immortal technique Fu Shun. The seventh peak master waved his hand. Purple light flashed in the sky and turned into an inescapable net, sealing the sky. The strong pressure caused the sky to distort rapidly. The sky was sealed layer by layer, and it was difficult to escape. With danger looming over her, the little girl's eyes were filled with tears. In the village, the villagers walked out one by one. Looking at the panicked and helpless little girl in the sky, they could not bear it, and subconsciously prayed silently. Humans were not saints, and it was difficult to distinguish between good and evil. There were evil thoughts, and there were also good thoughts. Even if there were great kindness, there would be times when desire was aroused. Even if there was great evil, there would also be moments of compassion. Today, looking at the little girl who was forced into a corner, the people's hearts were filled with compassion, and they prayed to the heavens. 1 person, 2 people, 10 people, 100 people, 100 people, 170 families, and more than 1,000 villagers looked to the heavens and prayed. Threads of psychic power flew into the sky continuously, converging into a clear and visible force that penetrated the space and entered the bodies of the 2 people. Huan felt it. Looking at the force that was constantly gathering around him, his eyes narrowed. Everyone's wish force. Don't waste any more time. Let's end this quickly. A sense of uneasiness rose. The 7th peak master's figure flashed past and grabbed the little girl in front of him. At this moment, the sky suddenly sank. Without any warning, the entire ground shook and snow flew into the sky. In the next moment, an indescribable force rose. Within 100 miles, everything changed. Grass and trees turned into swords, ice and snow became swords, psychic power became swords, and everything in the world became swords. They circled around and rushed into the sky. Seeing the changes in the surroundings, the 3 of them were stunned. Then, they reacted abruptly and looked at the person on the little girl's back. Although the red-robed person who stood up had not opened his eyes, his aura was already so strong that it was difficult to look at him. Tens of thousands of swords crept and hummed softly. One after another, they lined up in the sky, as if welcoming the return of the sword from the peak. The little girl looked at the red-robed figure standing at the side. Finally, she could no longer suppress the grievances in her heart. Her little hand kept wiping away the tears on her face. She was so pitiful that it made one's heart ache. She prayed to 100 people, 1,000 people and 10,000 people. For 100 days, she did not sleep or rest. She begged and bowed to everyone she saw. Finally he woke up. There was a girl in the heavens. She kowtowed 3,000 times in front of people. On the road to hell, life and death. Chapter 676. Above the Li family village, the phoenix woke up. Hongyi stood in the air, his aura recovering. He had been reborn. Up in the sky, heaven and earth sensed it. Thunder rumbled and heavenly punishment descended, preventing the phoenix from returning from the yellow springs. As the heavenly punishment descended, 10,000 swords automatically protected their master. They turned into a stream of swords that soared into the sky. The sword light covered the sky, shocking the world. Below, all the commoners were shocked by this scene. They looked at the young man in red with respect. Was that a god? With 10,000 swords protecting him, the heavenly punishment was difficult to descend. Hongyi's consciousness gradually returned to him. Like a tide, the scenes were reflected in his soul. The phoenix that had been reborn returned from the yellow springs. A huge shadow appeared in the sky. Phoenix cries resounded throughout the world. In the next moment, Hongyi opened his eyes. Amidst the dazzling light, endless phoenix flames soared into the sky. The flames that could burn the world appeared once again. In front, Huan and the other 2 looked at the rising aura of Hongyi. Their expressions became serious. This was troublesome. Senior brothers, please return. Hongyi spoke calmly without the slightest threat. It was as if he was just negotiating. However, The pressure of his words made their hearts sink. It was so heavy that they couldn't speak. Be careful, he's different from before. Feeling the pressure that was far stronger than before, Chi Huan reminded them. Yes. The masters of the 6th and 7th peaks nodded at the same time. They didn't dare to delay any longer. Their figures flashed as they attacked first. Hong Yi's astral soul appeared amidst the phoenix flames. He unsheathed his sword and pushed back the two experts. Come behind me. Ning Chen shifted his gaze and looked at the little girl at the side as he spoke. Okay. Wiped away the tears on her face and nodded obediently. She walked behind Ning Chen. 9th junior brother, sorry for the offense. Chi Huan sighed. Celestial origin energy gathered in his palm and pressed towards Ning Chen. The power of the palm was completely different. The two peak masters' majestic true chi stirred up the wind and clouds, splitting the lightning. The oppressive pressure was driving people crazy. The sword and palm collided. In the second move, 10,000 swords fell from the sky, turning into an endless stream of swords that broke through the air, shaking the battle. When one retreated, the other two advanced. The 6th and 7th summit leaders joined forces once again and pressed forward. Vast primordial energy was like waves that could split mountains and split seas. The second move, phoenix fire splitting the heavens, the wind and clouds above the star soul sword moved. The dragons and phoenixes crisscrossed, dyeing the sword red. There was a stuffy cough and blood reflected the setting sun. Red clothes instantly vanished and reappeared in front of the two people's throats. Seeing that you didn't try to kill Einer just now, I'll spare you this time, but only this time. Back down. Nether Spring activated the restriction, and his cultivation was instantly sealed. Ning Chen waved his hand and shook the two of them out of the battle. After that, he looked at Chi Huan and said calmly, 5th senior brother, I really never imagined that there would be a day when we would meet on the battlefield. I can't help it. Sorry. As soon as he finished speaking, Chi Huan didn't speak any further. He stomped his foot on the ground as 7 colored rays of light coiled around his palm, and the brilliance of an immortal technique flickered as it drew the energy of the laws of the heavens and the earth to tear through the sky. The sword light blocked the immortal technique, and red clothes retreated half a step. His sword aura changed, and the aura of extreme yang surged out. 9 suns rose, shining brilliantly. With the appearance of the 9 suns, Ning Chen's left hand formed a sword with his fingers and circulated the power of the extreme yang scripture. Suddenly, the sky was filled with red light like stars. The two extreme yang techniques complemented each other and flowed together. 100 suns returned to the east. In an instant, 100 suns gathered in the sky, circling and spinning. Soon after, they fell from the sky and descended into the mortal world. Immortal technique, shocking rainbow. Chi Huan instantly dodged the divine suns. He waved his hand, and an immortal rainbow appeared. 7 colors lingered around it, as it collided with the 100 suns falling from the sky. There was a rumbling explosion as the sky collapsed and the earth fell. The aftershock roared, scattering the wind and clouds within 100 miles. Ning Chen pulled the little girl behind him, and his figure flashed, avoiding the aftershock. Soon after, he waved his sword and slashed through the air. The sword light flashed past, and the wind howled and the clouds scattered. It split the void, and 1,000 feet of wild mist instantly arrived. Chi Huan focused and condensed true essence in his palm, blocking the sword light. The palm and sword collided, and the sword intent spread everywhere. With a ripping sound, his clothes were torn apart, and red blood dripped down. 9th junior brother, you're really different now. Chi Huan waved his hand to seal the wound on his left shoulder. He looked at the person in front of him and sighed. Victory or defeat, life or death. Can't you stop moving forward? The battle was difficult to resolve. Ning Chen's left hand flashed, and a white rainbow appeared. The sharp edge of the sword shone with a dazzling brilliance under the setting sun. From the beginning of this battle, there was no room for mercy. Einer, back off. Ning Chen instructed again, and his figure instantly disappeared. The two swords flashed with white light, and a new chapter of the battle began. Chi Huan flipped his palm to block the attack, and immediately felt the pressure increase. The two swords around him changed rapidly, one hard and one soft. They complemented each other, and there was no way to dodge. Blocking one sword and hitting another sword, blood splattered everywhere. The huge gap between cultivation and foundation was infinitely narrowed in the rapid exchange of blows. Without enough chi, his attacks were already weak. The phoenix's speed became faster and faster, and the light on the sword became sharper and sharper. Sword on sword, sword light crisscrossed, and illusory chains appeared above the 9 heavens, resonating with the martial arts of the mortal world. Chi Huan flipped his palm to block the sword light, and a 7-colored brilliance surrounded his body. He was like an immortal king, who had descended to the mortal world. Every move he made, his strength constantly increased. There was no turning back, and the helplessness of victory or defeat didn't allow the two to show any mercy. Martial arts and immortal arts collided at the peak. After exchanging several blows, the white rainbow condensed into a soft finger and wrapped around the former's arm, sealing off the immortal arts. His left arm was restrained, and Chi Huan's expression turned serious. He condensed vast origin energy, and the power of his finger broke through the heart. Close at hand, the two of them clashed. His astral soul condensed into phoenix fire, and met the attack head-on. With a loud bang, the world became boundless, and the aftershock was chaotic. Hong Yi turned back to avoid the aftershock, and instantly rushed forward again. Absolute power and absolute speed clashed fiercely under the afterglow of the setting sun. The two of them, who came from the same Mahist sect, abandoned their friendship and faced each other in life and death. A corporeal realm expert, the master of the 5th peak who had been reborn with immortal arts, moved with terrifying might. Even with extreme speed, it was difficult to completely suppress him. The battle was white-hot, and the white snow was dyed red. If one knew that everything would turn into enmity, why would one sigh about the love between fellow disciples? If there is an afterlife, I hope we will never meet again. Chi Huan's palm collided with the sword, and blood dripped down. He raised his hand and grabbed the white rainbow. Looking at the person in front of him, pain and helplessness flashed in his eyes. He let out a long shout, and his black hair stood up. In an instant, the 7 colors were extremely dazzling, and blood mist gushed out, dyeing the surrounding world a beautiful red. Seeing this, Ning Chen's expression turned serious. He retreated 10 feet, and his eyes opened. The 4 divisions appeared, and an ancient divine power descended. His black hair instantly changed, and a dazzling red color fluttered in the wind. After stepping into the divine realm, his strength temporarily broke through the limit of perfection and reached the emptiness realm. The strange feeling he had never felt before was so clear, and it made him sink into it. In the final battle, there was no winner, only life and death. The last emotion in Ning Chen's eyes disappeared. He took a step forward and instantly disappeared. Extreme speed. The phoenix returning to its ancestral form, the divine power in the mortal world, shocking the world, and dazzling red, making the world lose its color. On the other hand, Chi Huan's body was surrounded by 7 colors. The blood mist in his immortal arts burned continuously, and the light of life bloomed like a lotus. In the final battle, the entire horizon shook. It was like a battle between gods, and it made the people below tremble. Immortal art 7 Rainbow Burial Sun. The rainbow light crossed the 9 heavens, drawing a beautiful path back to the yellow springs. The immortal art was shocking, and it was impossible to see in the mortal world. Dragon Sparrow Transformation. The 7 rainbows drew a path, and the 4 divisions defied the world. The red-clothed figure flickered, and the azure dragon and the vermilion bird flew out, borrowing each other's strength. The sound of swords humming resounded through the horizon. The collision of 2 extremes, the destruction of gods, and the burial of immortals. Boundless turbulence surged, and the 2 of them were forced to retreat. The sun was about to set, and the intense battle was about to end. The astral soul in Ning Chen's hand spun, and the sword spirit scattered in the horizon gathered unceasingly, endlessly, and dazzling the world. Nirvana! In the next moment, the sword light soared into the sky, crisscrossing, and incomparably magnificent. The sword of Nirvana experienced life and death, and reached the pinnacle. In an instant, the red-clothed figure disappeared, and the sword light that filled the sky also disappeared. Dazzling, the astral soul descended, and 10,000 swords followed, breaking the sky and breaking the sea. Qi Huan focused, circulating the immortal energy in his body, and the seven-colored light protected him. This was his strongest defense, blocking the strongest opponent in his life. The intense collision caused the sword qi and immortal energy to be exhausted unceasingly. His trembling astral soul broke through the seven-colored light inch by inch. At the final moment, the sword pierced a little deeper, and blood flowed out. Qi Huan's mouth was dyed red, and he condensed the energy in his palm, causing the sky to tremble violently. One sword formless. There was no hesitation, no mercy. The astral soul in Ning Chen's hand spun rapidly, and the sword pierced through Qi Huan's body. Arg! With a groan, Qi Huan retreated several steps. After 10 steps, Qi Huan stopped and looked at the person in front of him with a complicated expression. The aura in his right palm gradually dissipated, but it didn't land. Snowflakes drifted about, and a waterfall of blood flowed unceasingly, dyeing the green-clothed figure and the sword edge red. A battle without a victor finally came to an end. Ning Chen looked at the green-clothed figure in front of him, and his expression dimmed. He didn't say anything, nor did he say anything. Ninth junior brother, you have already surpassed me. You have won this battle. Qi Huan's face had a smile of relief as he softly spoke. I'm sorry. Ning Chen suppressed the sadness in his heart. No need to apologize. You don't owe me anything. Perhaps this is the best ending. As he spoke, Qi Huan looked into the distance, and the light in his eyes grew dimmer and dimmer. He slowly said, Your senior brothers and sisters are all waiting for me. Ning Chen, remember, you must survive. Seven-colored light gathered the last of his strength and poured into Qi Huan's body. A moment later, Qi Huan's arm drooped, and his body slowly fell to the ground. Senior brother. Ning Chen's heart ached, and he stretched out his hand to support Qi Huan. The sadness on his face could no longer be concealed. In the distance, the heavens speaker rushed over. When he saw this scene, he was first startled, but then he sighed and didn't go forward. In the final battle, Ning Chen silently carried Qi Huan's body and walked down from the sky step by step. At this moment, a white-clothed figure walked out from the 9 heavens. Without any warning, his palm flipped over, and the wind and clouds changed. Qi Huan, the 6th Peak Master, and the 7th Peak Master's bodies disintegrated at the same time. Their blood origin and soul power turned into streams of light that shot into the sky and merged into the white-robed figure's body. Old bastard, you're courting death. Ning Chen's body trembled, and he suddenly turned his head. His eyes were bloodshot, and a terrifying killing intent erupted. His blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. Chapter 677. Above the 9 heavens, Master Mo appeared. He scattered the bodies of the 3 Peak Masters and absorbed their blood, origin, and soul power. No one had time to react to the sudden change. Only the remaining blood red in their eyes reflected the cruelty of reality. The red robe that soared into the sky was filled with rage. The killing intent on his sword seemed to have solidified. With a thump sound, the 7-colored astral soul shook. Terrifying shockwaves swept across the horizon. The knowing destiny sword was filled with uncontrollable rage. His entire body was filled with killing intent as his sword split open the 9 heavens. Old 9, it seems that you've grown a lot. Master Mo's eyes flashed with a strange light. He flipped his palm and shook off the sword. Ning Chen didn't say anything. He took a step forward and turned his sword. The sword's edge was incomparably sharp. Rays of cold killing light shone in the eyes. Excellent swordsmanship. No wonder Qi Huan was willing to die in your hands. Master Mo blocked one ray of sword light after another. The 7-colored brilliance on his body was dazzling. Old man, you humiliated me. Today, I'll use your blood to pay for it. Ning Chen's body flickered, and the sword light shocked the surroundings. The sword was so fast that it was hard to see it with one's eyes. His hatred was deep, and his heart was filled with killing intent. The red robe was like a red dragon coming out of the sea. The sword light surged, and the world fell silent. Master Mo's eyes narrowed. He flipped his palm and shook off the sword light. The seven-colored brilliance on his body became more and more dazzling, illuminating the entire sky. The setting sun fell, and the sky was filled with red. The clouds in the 9 heavens were chaotic. The seven-colored sword light kept rising, blocking the killing light on the sword again and again. Outside the battle, the Heaven's Speaker looked at the battle in front and sighed softly. She raised her delicate hand and supported knowing destiny. Heaven's Speaker, your opponent is not me now. Master Emo flipped his palm and shook off the bound void. He immediately looked into the distance and said calmly, Emperor, make your move. Wise choice, Master Emo, don't forget what you promised me. As he spoke, golden flames appeared in the sky. The figure of an emperor walked out. His powerful aura caused the void to distort. Emperor Jinshi. Seeing the person who came, the Heaven's Speaker's expression froze. This is troublesome. When Emperor Jinshi appeared, Master Emo shifted his gaze back to the red-robed young man in front of him. He said calmly, I thought Qi Huang could do it, but I didn't expect that I would have to do it myself in the end. Old 9, I'm gratified by your growth, but it ends here. As soon as he finished speaking, Emo Zhu raised his hand. The wind and clouds changed, and an incomparably powerful force rose rapidly. Dazzling multicolored light filled the world, and a terrifying aura shook the 9 heavens. Peak corporeal realm experts, half a step into the true realm, once again displayed world-shocking abilities. Seeing this, Ningchen let out a low shout. Red light surged around his body as he urged the power of the god realm. The heavy vast qi revolved around his body as he pushed his cultivation to the limit. Immortal technique, shocking rainbow. A finger pierced through the air, and a shocking rainbow shot out. A completely different power separated the heavens and the earth, and descended upon the mortal realm. With the immortal art on his body, a dangerous aura erupted. At this moment, thunder rumbled and lightning flashed in the sky. A red bolt of lightning broke through the sky, and scattered the immortal rainbow. Dazzling scarlet light appeared. An unfamiliar yet somewhat familiar aura appeared on the battlefield. The figure standing on the battlefield was wearing a red battle robe. The divine halberd in his hand was surging with red lightning, and a deafening hissing sound could be heard. Seeing the person who came, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed, and his footsteps temporarily stopped. Xiang Yuan, I've been waiting for a long time. Emo Zhu said calmly. He looked to the other side and said, Lulua, come out too. Before he finished speaking, the void in the distance rolled, and a beautiful figure in green walked out. Her clothes fluttered, and she was powerful and cold. I'm sure you guys have been waiting for this day for a long time. Come, let me see how much you've grown over the years. Emo Zhu looked at the 3 of them, and said expressionlessly, As you wish. Without saying much, the scarlet halberd pierced through the sky. Xiang Yuan's body moved, and the aura of a dragon could split mountains and seas. The moment he made his move, killing intent filled the air. The sky was filled with multicolored light. The scarlet halberd was as heavy as a mountain, and its mighty aura stirred the heavens and the earth. 9th junior brother, you're the fastest. Observe the situation carefully, and wait for an opportunity to make a move. Lulua looked at the battlefield and said seriously, Okay. Ningchen nodded and replied. The main force of Emo Gate's first peak was fighting Emo Zhu. The late corporeal realm cultivator took the lead, and as the halberd shattered, he was temporarily tied with Emo Gate's master. The halberd and palm collided, and wave after wave of aftershocks spread out, destroying the void within 100 miles. The most terrifying experts could be shocked by this. Lulua's eyes constantly flickered as the battle reached its climax. A moment later, her figure flashed and entered the battlefield. Lulua attacked, and green vines appeared in the void, sealing the surrounding area. The green vines were endless, and they took root in the void, breaking towards the white-robed figure in the battlefield. Not bad. Emo Zhu calmly commented, and waved his hand to shake off the green vines. He took a step forward, and a 7-colored brilliance spread out. The green vines around him crumbled, unable to withstand the might of his immortal yuan. On the other side of the battlefield, The Heaven Speaker was fighting against Emperor Jin Shi. The wind and clouds swirled and golden flames surged. The situation was also very intense. Heaven Speaker, the matters of Mo Gate have nothing to do with you. Why do you have to interfere? Imperial Lord Jin Shi blocked the power of the surrounding wind and clouds with a flip of his palm. Everyone has the right to live. The disciples of Mo Gate should not become sacrificial furnaces, replied the Heaven Speaker. Your benevolence will ultimately become the source of your own destruction. Heaven Speaker, fairness does not exist in this world. It did not exist in the past, and it will remain the same in the future. Imperial Lord Jin Shi sneered. As long as there is kindness in people's hearts, it is not the end of the world. I will exhaust my entire life's strength to sow the seeds of hope in this world. With that, the wind and clouds around the Heaven Speaker began to surge. Boundless energy of the world gathered from all directions, and its might was unbelievable. Your stupidity is such a pity. Now that you've already opened your eyes once, do you still have the strength to get past me? Imperial Lord Jin Shi sneered as he looked at the changes in the surroundings. The Heaven Speaker did not reply. He stepped forward, bringing with him the power of the wind and clouds from all directions to shake the Emperor in front of him. There was a shocking explosion. Heaven and earth sank. Boundless aftershocks shook and spread out rapidly. The battle between the two sides was equally intense. Terrifying aftershocks continued to spread, and the void within 100 miles was devastated. Rustling sounds could be heard, telling of sorrow. Outside the battle, only one person remained indifferent. He wore red clothes and had blood-red hair. He stared at the battle in front of him without moving at all. Inside the battle between the three became more and more intense. The red figure did not diminish the demeanor of the war god. He was determined to take revenge, and his body was filled with courage. He waved his red halberd like a graceful swan, leaving no room for retreat. Mo Gate raised his hand to stop the flying green vines, then flipped his palm to block the red halberd. He said, Red Cloud Halberd, Xiang Yuan, you and the divine weapon I gave you will die together in this life. Back then, you were my meticulous creation. Now every time I use it, my hatred for you deepens. Xiang Yuan lowered his halberd, his eyes filled with killing intent. How much respect there was, how much hatred there was. Mo Gate's #1 peak master, who was filled with killing intent, became more and more serious. He did not care about the accumulated injuries in his body, and went all out to kill. With a bang, the halberd collided once again. On the other side, Lulua's figure flashed past. She also sent a palm strike towards the heart of the person in front of her. Mo Gate remained unmoved like a mountain. His left hand condensed Yuan Qi, once again receiving the former's palm strike. In a short moment, their foundation and cultivation directly competed. A terrifying aura violently filled the air. Xiang Yuan and Lulua's mouths were immediately dyed red. Frost Sky Burial Flower. Ignoring her injuries, Lulua's body glowed with green light. Vines wrapped around the person in front of her. The vines bloomed. In the wind and snow, flowers bloomed and fell. The moon and the moon were round, and the flowers bloomed and fell. This was the law of the world. The moment the wind and snow took away the fallen flowers, the world darkened. Cracks began to appear on Mo Gate's body that was wrapped by the vines. Mo Gate focused his mind. Immortal Yuan surged on his palm, sending the two flying. Taking half a step back, Mo Gate's body was disturbed by the law. Vermilion blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. His aura became unstable for the first time. At this moment, Hong Yi, who was watching from outside the battle, finally moved. Her astral soul appeared. In an instant, her sword broke through the world of mortals. Your cooperation is not bad. When the sword was in front of him, Mo Gate raised his hand to grab the sword. Blood continuously flowed from his hand, dyeing the sword red. Formless sword, the sword spun rapidly, breaking through the bindings. It entered an inch into his body, causing blood to overflow. With a groan, Mo Gate flipped his palm and sent Hong Yi flying. Hong Yi retreated. After a few steps, she stabilized her body. Her feet swept past, and she once again pressed forward. The extremely fast sword light did not leave the slightest chance to breathe. Each sword was faster than the previous one. The killing light was sharp and dazzling. Emogate blocked the sword, but he was unable to suppress the power of law on his body in time. His white robe was instantly dyed red. You have done very well. Really well. However, it's time to end this. As soon as his words fell, Emogate shouted. The seven-colored brilliance around his body quickly retracted. The yin and yang aura rapidly rose. Black and white resonated with each other, surging into the nine heavens. For the first time, the figure that appeared in the world had black and white eyes. An extremely terrifying pressure swept down, causing the world to tremble. Immortal technique, joys and sorrows. With the appearance of yin and yang, the immortal technique was unleashed. Ripples of black and white light rapidly destroyed everything in the surroundings. With Emogate as the center, space rapidly collapsed, spreading hundreds of miles away. With the imminent crisis, Xiang Yuan's expression changed. His figure flashed, and he straightened his body to block the attack. His halberd collided with the yin and yang. With a loud bang, blood dyed the sky. The destructive power that could not be blocked instantly destroyed the cultivator's hard bones. Blood, snow, and a red figure fell from the sky and smashed into the ground. Senior brother. Lulua's pupil shrank fiercely as she cried out in grief. Ning Chen's expression was also shocked, but he recovered in an instant. His figure flashed, and he quickly retreated with Lulua. You can't leave. Before he finished speaking, Emogate's figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already behind the two of them. He flipped his palm, and his divine power shook the world. The situation of the battle changed rapidly. The Heaven Speaker suddenly turned his head, and saw the change in the battle situation in the distance. He could no longer hesitate. Chi waves instantly erupted from his body, and he opened his eyes again. In an instant, two lines of blood flowed down from the Heaven Speaker's eyes. An incomparably majestic aura spread out. The entire sky above the Li family village was filled with wind and snow. The power of the world appeared in the world again. Emogate sensed it. He immediately turned his palm and slapped at the power of the world. With a bang, his body was pushed back several feet. In front of him, the Heaven Speaker stood in the void. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and there was a layer of frost on it. Drops of blood silently dripped down from her eyes that were as beautiful as the sun and moon, dyeing her white dress red. Chapter 678. In the sky above the Li family village, the battle of wind and clouds had reached its most critical moment. The Heaven Speaker opened her eyes again, and blood flowed out from her eyes. An indescribably terrifying pressure shook the surroundings. Terrifying waves of air surged, drowning the void within 100 miles. The Heaven Speaker who opened her eyes again raised her delicate hand, and the golden flames that filled the sky instantly disappeared without a trace. The person who was the closest to God in the mortal world once again displayed her shocking power. Every move of hers caused the wind and clouds to go crazy, and her aura was extremely terrifying. Facing the existence who was the closest to God in the mortal world, even people as strong as Mo Zhu and Sovereign Lord Jin, she became serious. They fully activated their martial arts to resist the heavens' might. In the wind and snow, the heavens' might became more and more terrifying. The powerful pressure forced the two supreme experts back. World-cleansing holy light. The holy light descended, burning the mortal world. The terrifying flames burned away all the filth in the world. Mo Zhu raised his hand, and yin and yang reversed. A black moon appeared, and an immortal technique appeared, blocking the holy light. With a loud bang, the black moon collapsed, and the aftermath spread out, scattering the wind and clouds. Ugh! Mo Zhu and Sovereign Lord Jin, she both retreated a few steps at the same time, and their auras became chaotic. As the leader of a sect, you actually made things difficult for a few juniors. What qualifications do you have to be the leader of a sect? The Heaven Speaker disappeared, and instantly appeared in front of Sovereign Lord Jin Shi. She raised her delicate hand, and pressed it on the latter's chest. Blood splattered everywhere, and Sovereign Lord Jin Shi was sent flying. He only managed to stabilize himself, after flying for several hundred feet. How many years can you save by devouring a disciple? 10 years. Or 100 years? What are they in your eyes? The heaven speaker appeared in front of Emoju again. Her delicate hand condensed wind and clouds, and she slapped at Emoju's chi. Emoju's expression sank, and the yin and yang aura around him revolved, blocking the heaven's might. With a loud bang, the battle instantly changed. Emoju was sent flying a few 100 feet away, and a drop of blood fell from the corner of his mouth. The existence that was so distinct, and had surpassed the limits of cultivation. It was so terrifying that it was shocking. The heaven speaker of the mortal world had shocked both the past and the present. The situation of the battle changed abruptly. The expressions of the two top experts were extremely grave. Everyone in the world had heard of how terrifying heaven speaker was. However, only after truly exchanging blows with one did they know that the legends were still unable to fully describe how terrifying they were. Blood flowed from her eyes, and droplets of blood dyed her dress red. The enraged Tianyu stood above the mortal world, and with a raise of her hand, she suppressed two heroes. Space rotated, and the beautiful figure disappeared. Her speed was unbelievable. Even Ning Chun, who was outside the battle, was shocked. This was the first time he realized that besides the travel scroll, there was another power that could match the speed of the phoenix. The heavens and earth received the mandate, and the heavenly word was used to kill. The transcendence of one's cultivation realm created a high level of power. The two mighty masters of the present age joined hands to receive the attacks, but they were suppressed and forced to retreat in defeat. After exchanging more than 10 moves, Sovereign Lord Jin Shi's injuries were exposed. The golden flames on his body became unstable, and they were gradually extinguished by the power of heaven and earth. What a terrifying heaven speaker! Sovereign Jin Shi raised his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked at the fairy-like woman in front of him, and said in a deep voice. Emoju's expression was also grave. Before his main body attacked, he had already used his clone to waste the heaven speaker's opportunity to open her eyes. He didn't expect that this woman would once again open her eyes without hesitation. Think of a way to stall for time. She has already opened her eyes once. Now that she has opened them again, she must have paid a great price. She can't hold on for too long, reminded Emoju. Sovereign Lord Jin Shi nodded. With a flip of his palm, golden providence surged and spread rapidly between heaven and earth. The power of a domain appeared for the first time. Emoju also used the power of yin and yang. Black and white light intersected around him, and a shocking power spread out and protected his body. The heaven speaker's expression didn't change when she saw the two of them dragging out the battle. Blood dripped from her eyes one after another. Outside the battle, Ningchen focused and prepared to help. However, he was stopped by a word. No need. Watch the battle carefully. It will be helpful for you when you step into the third realm in the future. The heaven speaker didn't turn around. Her back was facing Ning Chun as she spoke calmly. Ning Chun was startled, but he soon nodded and silently agreed. Ning Chun, Senior Tian, you will be fine, right? Not far away, Ener came forward and asked worriedly. He'll be fine. Ning Chun responded, but the worry in the depths of his eyes couldn't be concealed. The heaven speaker's eye-opening this time was obviously different from before. The price was probably greater than expected. In the void, the chaotic battle became more and more unpredictable. The two of them dragged out the battle and refused to fight head-on. They didn't hide their purpose at all. They were waiting for the moment when the heaven speaker's body couldn't withstand the power of heaven and earth. Golden flames condensed from providence formed a boundless flame domain around Sovereign Lord Jin Shi. Borrowing the power of faith of all living beings, he resisted the power of heaven and earth. Despite fighting against two peak corporeal realm cultivators, the heaven speaker didn't show any fear. Her delicate hand rose and fell, shaking heaven and earth. The spilling blood was the bright red mark of the enemy's defeat. Large areas of the flame domain collapsed. The heaven speaker was invincible. 4 symbols heavenly summoning. At the critical moment of the battle, the heaven speaker turned her hand and formed a divine seal. Borrowing power, the might of the 4 symbols deities appeared. With a roar, a dragon soared out of the sea, and a vermilion bird burned the sky, attacking Sovereign Lord Jin Shi. On the other side, deities appeared around Sovereign Lord Mo at the same time. The white tiger's sharp claws split the sky, and the black tortoise broke the mountains and split the sea. Unparalleled power pressed down on the former. With the appearance of the four symbols, the battle immediately changed again. There was no way to dodge, and the two of them were dyed red again. Celestial technique, sun and moon above the sky. The aftershock caused Sovereign Lord Mo to retreat a few steps. He stabilized his body and raised his hand. A black moon and a white sun appeared in the sky. An ancient primordial power of law descended and towered above the 9 heavens. Sun and moon above the sky. How can the sun and moon above the sky? As she spoke, the heaven speaker turned her palm and scattered the sun and moon. Her delicate hand turned red, but she didn't seem to notice it. She stepped forward and arrived in front of Sovereign Lord Mo in an instant. With a bang, blood flowed out. Sovereign Lord Mo's body slid and retreated a dozen steps. At this moment, Sovereign Lord Jin Shi's palm came from behind. It was powerful and domineering. Back off! The heaven speaker's eyes turned cold. With a soft shout, the true chi around her trembled and sent the person behind her flying. Sovereign Lord Jin, she was heavily injured again. He staggered a few steps and vomited blood. What an unbelievable existence. They were both peak corporeal realm experts, but they were unparalleled. How could one fight against heaven and earth? The heaven speaker, who had opened her eyes, was like the sky. With a flip of her hand, the wind and clouds churned violently again. The sun set and the sky darkened. The light of the battle became more and more dazzling. Waves of chi spread out in the sky above the Li family village, announcing the intensity of the battle. Below, Lulua was forcefully protecting Xiang Yuan's life with her own strength. However, the fact that his martial bones were all shattered made Lulua, who had extraordinary medical skills, feel powerless. Seeing this, Ning Chen's figure flashed and landed outside the battle. Looking at the heavily injured Xiang Yuan, he turned his palm and poured qi into the latter's body. His divine domain didn't disappear. Traces of the Azure Dragon's power continuously catalyzed and stabilized Xiang Yuan's injuries. After a while, Ning Chen withdrew his hand. His expression was grave. This is troublesome. Thank you, ninth junior brother. Lulua hugged Xiang Yuan and said softly, "Seeing your brother's injuries." Ning Chen sighed and didn't say anything else. It's the will of heaven. A mysterious smile appeared on Lulua's face. She said, Zichuan is dead. Qi Huan and the others are also dead. Perhaps this is the fate of Mo Gate's 9 disciples. Lulua looked at the young man in front of her and said softly, "Junior brother, you are different from us. You must live well." Senior sister, you. Sensing that something was wrong, it was too late to react. Lulua's body shone brightly and green vines spread out, binding the three of them. Then, an extremely powerful energy continuously spread out along the vines. In an instant, green and red light intersected. 70% of the dual peak master's body had successfully changed owners and entered the former's body. With 70% of her body scattered, Lulua staggered and blood flowed out of her mouth. Don't! Ning Chen endured the pain in his body. He wanted to stop her, but it was already too late. In the battle, Mo Gate's master sensed the changes below. She was distracted for an instant, and her slender hand fell, dyeing the sky red. Heaven's judgment. The heaven speaker's body, that was forcefully holding on, grew weaker and weaker. Exhaustion flashed in her eyes. She didn't delay any longer, and waved her slender hand, summoning the 9th heaven's profound lightning to descend. It was a terrifying doomsday move. Before the lightning even fell, it already shook the heavens and the earth. Mo Gates and Sovereign Lord Jin Shi's expressions changed, and they quickly retreated from the battle. We can't fight anymore. Retreat. The situation was critical. Mo Gates' figure flashed, and he quickly retreated. Sovereign Lord Jin Shi snorted coldly and didn't stay. Golden flames rose and covered his body. In the next moment, a sea of lightning descended, drowning the entire sky. 2 waterfalls of blood bloomed and disappeared in an instant. The heaven speaker waved her hand to disperse the lightning. She slowly closed her tired eyes and withdrew her aura. On the ground, Lulua scattered her body and transferred most of her and Xiang Yuan's cultivation into Knowing Destiny's body. The endless energy had already reached the limit of Knowing Destiny's body. Not long after, the green vines disappeared. Lulua stopped and didn't say anything else. She took Xiang Yuan and walked away. Ning Chun suppressed the surging true qi in his body and looked at Lulua's back. A hint of sadness flashed through his eyes. After parting this time, he probably wouldn't have the chance to see her again in the future. We meet by fate and part by fate. Everyone has their own choice. Just like you, there's no need to be sad. The Heaven Speaker walked down from the sky and said calmly. Ning Chun looked at the woman in front of him and bowed respectfully. He said, "Thank you for saving me, Senior Heaven Speaker." "There's no need." The Heaven Speaker gently shook his head and said, "Good people deserve the protection of the heavens. You have great merit on you. And you also have unprecedented karma. I saved you because the kindness you showed was worthy of being saved by the Heaven Speaker. But if you turn evil one day, the Heaven Speaker won't show any mercy." "I've learned my lesson," Ning Chun said seriously. The Heaven Speaker nodded and looked at the little girl not far away. She waved her hand and said, "Einer, come here." When Einer heard this, she was slightly taken aback. Then she walked forward. "Einer, let me ask you a question. You must answer seriously," the Heaven Speaker said softly. "Okay." Einer nodded and replied softly. "Are you willing to become the new Heaven Speaker?" the woman asked slowly. Hearing this, Einer and Ning Chun were stunned and didn't react for a moment. "Einer, answer me," the Heaven Speaker asked again. Chapter 679. Li Family Village. Heaven's question shocked both of them. The question came out of nowhere, making it hard for them to react. Einer came back to her senses and looked at the person beside her. Seeing her gaze, Ning Chun sighed and said, "Einer, you have to make this choice yourself. I can't make it for you." Confusion appeared on Einer's small face as she looked at the woman before her and asked in confusion, "Why did you choose me?" A Heaven Speaker has to be able to bear the suffering and happiness of all living beings. The human heart is complicated and ever-changing. If you can bear it, you're the best choice, the Heaven Speaker said calmly. Ning Chun can do it too, Einer said. He can't. The Heaven Speaker shook her head and said, his hands are stained with the blood of too many people. Even if he's kind, he will be rejected by the world. This is an unchangeable fact. Einer looked troubled and grabbed the arm of the person beside her. She couldn't answer immediately. It's impossible for two Heaven Speakers to appear at the same time. Is this true? Ning Chun looked at the woman in front of him. Yes. The Heaven Speaker nodded. When Ning Chun heard this, a bad premonition arose in his heart. Don't think too much. That day won't come immediately. At least, I'll wait until the day Einer truly becomes a Heaven Speaker, the woman said calmly. Ning Chun looked at the little girl beside him. Einer had to make her own decision. He couldn't make it for her. Can I think about it? Einer tightened her grip. Yes, think about it carefully. Come find me at Heaven's Speech Peak, when you've made up your mind. The woman didn't urge her anymore. Her figure gradually faded and disappeared into the night. After the Heaven Speaker left, the villagers of Li Family Village slowly recovered from their shock. Looking at the two people in the snow, their gazes were filled with awe and nervousness. The little boy beside the woman broke free from her hand and ran over to them. Sister Einer, are you a deity? Hearing this childish question, Einer recovered from her inner conflict. Looking at the little boy with pure eyes, she smiled and said, Sister isn't a deity. I'm just a cultivator. Then can Sister teach me how to cultivate? The little boy's eyes were filled with anticipation. Einer was startled and couldn't immediately answer. Xiao Yuan, don't mess around. The woman in the distance hurriedly walked over and softly reprimanded her. A hint of fear appeared on the little boy's face. He took half a step back and didn't dare to ask any more questions. Seeing this, Einer squatted down and rubbed the little boy's hair, saying, Xiao Yuan, if you really want to learn martial arts, quickly grow up. When you are 15 years old, if you still want to learn martial arts, I will come back to teach you, okay? All right. The little boy nodded vigorously and said, Einar, I should have told you not to make promises so easily. But you have to keep your promises, said Ningchen calmly. Yes. Einar nodded and said softly, I will remember. When he turns 15, I will come back once. And let's go. It's getting late, Ningchen said before turning around and leaving. Auntie Li Xiaoyuan, take care. Goodbye. Einar waved at the two of them and jogged to catch up. Seeing the two of them leave, the woman sighed softly. The legends were indeed true. These immortal-like people were not people that mortals could come into contact with. The little boy didn't mind the red-clothed youth's coldness. He looked at the two of them with a pure gaze filled with envy and anticipation. There were still 5 years left. He wanted to quickly grow up. The woman didn't see it, and neither did the little boy. When the red-clothed youth turned around and left, traces of red light silently entered the little boy's body. A drop of water would be repaid with a gushing spring. In the night, Einar grabbed the hand of the person beside the former and said softly, Ningchen, I don't want to become a heaven speaker. Why? Asked Ningchen calmly. I just don't want to. Einar didn't explain. Up to you. A faint smile appeared on Ningchen's face. He didn't force her and said, This matter isn't urgent. Let me know when you have truly made your decision. Einar softly replied. The two of them gradually disappeared into the night. A cold wind blew, and snowflakes flew up, covering the cold moon in the sky. The spirit void starfield was an unfamiliar place. Qi filled the air, and within the gray mist was a palace that had existed since ancient times. The ground rumbled, and in the next moment, a powerful voice rang out, Vermilion Bird. As soon as he finished speaking, the void twisted and a figure shrouded in mist walked out. Subordinate is here. Go to the Red Phoenix starfield and bring back the phoenix. The powerful voice rang out once more. Yes. The Vermilion Bird Nether General calmly accepted the order. The Qi gathered and covered the palace once more. The Vermilion Bird Nether General turned and left, rushing towards the Red Phoenix starfield. Not long after the Vermilion Bird Nether General disappeared, another figure covered in mist walked out. Behind him, a powerful voice rang out. Azure Dragon, follow the Vermilion Bird. If there are any problems, you will personally take action. Understood. The Azure Dragon agreed and followed him. Azure Dragon and the Vermilion Bird were the top two of the Nether Hall's 4 great Nether Generals. Each of their cultivations were above the corporeal realm, especially Azure Dragon, who was the leader of the 4 great Nether Generals. His strength was unfathomable. The Red Phoenix starfield Heavenly Speech Peak. Under an apricot tree, white flowers fluttered. They were so pure and beautiful, just like the woman in front of the tree. They were so perfect that they didn't seem to belong to the mortal world. The Heaven Speaker had forcefully opened the heaven's eye to observe the world of mortals. The Heaven Speaker's hair that reached her waist was somewhat dazzling. The heavens protected the virtuous, but the Heaven Speaker was the heavens themselves. Who would protect them? Under the apricot tree, the black-robed devil cultivator still hadn't woken up. This devil examination was so long that if he failed again, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. At the foot of the mountain, Hongyi brought Einar over for one thing, as well as for an answer. At the top of the mountain, the woman looked at the two people walking over. She raised her hand, and space shook, instantly bringing the two of them over. Einar, your answer, said the Heaven Speaker softly. Senior, I'm sorry. I don't want to become a Heaven Speaker, said Einar apologetically. The Heaven Speaker sighed softly. What a pity. The Heaven Speaker looked at the young man beside her and said, I know why you're here, but your demonic body can't leave Heavenly Speech Peak for now. Ningchen was silent. After a moment, he nodded and walked in front of the apricot tree. He flipped his palm and condensed Yuan Qi. Strands of soul power poured in and fused with the demonic body's memories. Not long after, Ningchen withdrew his hand and bowed to the woman in front of the peak. Senior Heaven Speaker, Einar and I will be leaving Heavenly Speech Planet. We might not return for a long time. I'd like to ask you to come. Go. Be careful in the future. The Heaven Speaker nodded with a calm expression. Ningchen nodded and didn't stay any longer. He brought Ener down the mountain. When Ener went down the mountain, she looked back and saw the woman's dazzling white hair. Tears of reluctance flashed in her eyes. The heavens speaker formed a seal with both hands. Wind and snow fell from the sky. It was so beautiful that it was sending the two of them off. Ener, since you've decided, don't hesitate. No matter what path you choose, you must walk down it with no regrets. The voice in the wind and snow was calm and gentle. The last teaching was the most selfless care from a senior to a junior. Ener nodded with tears in her eyes and followed the person beside her. In front of the peak, the heaven speaker looked at the two of them leaving. A faint sigh rose on her beautiful face. She hoped that the heavens wouldn't let down those who worked hard. Half a month later, on a beautiful planet, a green pleasure boat floated in the Mi River. It was quiet and peaceful. In the pleasure boat, Hong Yi, who was far away from the disputes of the pugilistic world, carefully taught the little girl the cultivation method day after day without any impatience. Ener listened to Hong Yi's explanation with a bitter face. Sometimes, she would throw a tantrum when she didn't understand. The path of cultivation wasn't easy. Ningchen walked it, and the path was extremely bumpy. However, because of this, he understood many things that others didn't. After all, Ener's cultivation time was still short. Although her talent surpassed ordinary people, it didn't mean that she was born with knowledge. There were still many things to learn. Ningchen taught her patiently. He didn't get angry when the little girl threw a tantrum. "I'm hungry. I'm going to eat." When the sun finally set, Ener immediately stood up and ran out of the boat. She stepped on the surface of the lake. Ningchen helplessly stood up and went outside the boat. When he saw that the little girl had already run away, he couldn't help but shake his head. It wasn't easy to get a child to sit down and cultivate patiently when she was having fun. An ancient divine tree took root in the ground beside the Mi River. It absorbed the spiritual energy of the spiritual land and gradually recovered some of its vitality. Not far away, some women and young girls came to wash their clothes. When they saw the green pleasure boat in the middle of the river, they were filled with curiosity. This pleasure boat had been here for more than 10 days and hadn't left. However, neither the women nor the young girls noticed that a divine tree was quietly growing not far away from them. It was growing stronger day after day. Ningchen set up a restriction to hide the undying peach tree's tracks. He didn't want anyone to notice it. "Mother, who are the people on that pleasure boat?" A young girl asked the woman beside her. "Which family is he from?" The woman replied, "Ordinary people didn't have the money or the time to row boats on the river all day." The young man on the pleasure boat had an extraordinary temperament. He was definitely not from an ordinary family. When the young girl heard the answer, she nodded her head in disbelief. Her beautiful eyes looked at the pleasure boat in the distance. She had seen those noble young masters before, but she always felt that this young man was different from them. As for what exactly was different, she couldn't tell. Ningchen looked at the bow of the pleasure boat in the river quietly. He didn't care about the gazes of the women and young girls. His attention was focused on the undying peach tree not far away. The demonic body had planted the peach tree here. It was indeed the most suitable place. The spiritual qi was abundant, and it was far away from the Jianghu. It would save him a lot of trouble. Now, the only problem was how to make the peach tree blossom and bear fruit as soon as possible. 9,000 years was too long. The headmaster had only managed to wait a little more than 1,000 years, with the help of the Confucian sect's 1,000 years of luck. Even if the laws of heaven beyond heaven were much more complete than those of the divine prefecture, it was impossible for anyone to live for more than 9,000 years. Chapter 680. Night fell, and the bright moon shone down on the riverside. A red-clothed figure walked across the water and arrived at the riverside. A cold wind blew past, causing the peach tree to sway. Rustling sounds could be clearly heard. Walking in front of the peach tree, Ningchen waved his hand and summoned the green cauldron. The water from the jade pool sprinkled over the divine tree. Within the boat, Ener woke up from her half-asleep state. She rubbed her eyes and walked out of the boat. Seeing the red-clothed figure in front of the peach tree, She thought for a moment before walking over to the riverside as well. Ina looked at the divine tree brimming with vitality and asked in confusion, Ningchen, does this tree really need 9,000 years to bloom and bear fruit? That's the rumor. Ningchen nodded and continued, I've already observed it for several days. This tree's growth is extremely slow, and the amount of spiritual qi it requires is unimaginable. It'll be very difficult for it to bear fruit in a short period of time. Furthermore, this tree seems to have its own consciousness. If it weren't for the Yellow Springs restriction, it would have taken a lot of effort to restrain it. It was rumored that the master of the Eastern Celestial World had personally gone to the Western Celestial World to fight the Queen Mother of the West for the undying peach tree. For it to cause the masters of two celestial worlds to personally take action, it was clear that this tree was truly extraordinary. Perhaps it really did have the ability to bring the dead back to life. But 9,000 years is too long. We can't keep waiting forever, said Iner. This tree will fully recover soon. At that time, we'll set out to search for the time restriction. Since Master Emo said that he once saw someone use the time restriction, that means it really does exist. I have no conflict of interest with him on this matter, so I can trust him, said Ningchen. How long do we have to wait? Asked Iner. I'm not sure. It'll take a few months, maybe a year. It just so happens that you just broke through not too long ago. You need time to stabilize your cultivation, said Ningchen calmly. When Iner heard this, she secretly stuck out her tongue. She still had to stay here for another year. She already couldn't stay here any longer. Go back and rest. We still have to continue cultivating tomorrow. Ningchen patted the little girl's head. Iner shook her head vigorously and flew towards the boat in dissatisfaction. After the little girl left, Ningchen waved his hand and put away the green cauldron. After thinking for a while, he raised his right hand and stretched it toward the undying immortality peach tree. But at this moment, a weak and timid will was transmitted over. It was somewhat fearful, somewhat hesitant, and somewhat repulsive. Ningchen's eyes lit up when he saw this. The tree of immortality indeed had its own will. It seemed that the tree of immortality had undergone many changes after growing for so many years. In the next moment, strands of green light spread out and poured into the divine tree. Before Lulua left, she had scattered most of her cultivation into his body and also entrusted him with future matters. When the green light spread into the immortality peach tree, the immortality peach tree suddenly swayed without wind. Its timid will suddenly became alert and strongly rejected the green light spreading out from its body. When Ningchen saw this, he frowned. What's going on? Lulua was once the master of the fourth peak, and the cultivation technique she practiced was very beneficial to the growth of all living creatures. Why did the immortality peach tree display such a strong repulsive feeling? In order to verify the reason, Ningchen increased the green light around his body. As expected, the tree of immortality peach tree's consciousness produced an even stronger repulsive force. Strange, Ningchen muttered softly. It seemed that the cultivation technique they practiced still had some secrets that they didn't know about. Master Emo was able to find their whereabouts time and time again, so it was definitely related to this. However, Ningchen didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the cultivation technique in his body. It was really strange. After pondering for a while, Ningchen couldn't figure out what the problem was. He waved his hand and scattered the green light. Then, he withdrew his aura and took a step forward, returning to the boat. Under the moonlight, the green pleasure boat kept drifting in the lake. It was like a lonely boat that could never find a ferry, drifting forever in the Jianghu. When Ningchen flew back to the boat, a young girl happened to see this scene from afar. Her pretty face was filled with shock, and she couldn't believe her eyes. Was that a celestial? Could it be that celestials really existed in this world? Mortals sought to become celestials, and those who stepped on celestials sought to become celestials. They were all frogs in a well. However, whether celestials really existed in this world, who knew? The young girl suppressed the fluctuation in her heart and walked to the riverside to retrieve the wooden stick she had left behind. Before she left, she glanced at the pleasure boat in the lake. She still couldn't believe what she had just seen. Ningchen stood at the bow of the boat. When he saw the young girl leaving, his eyes flashed. He was too careless. However, there weren't many women in the mortal world who had such intelligence. Unfortunately, he didn't want to take any more disciples now that he had Yin-Er. When he walked back to the boat, Yin-Er was already sound asleep. The little girl, who usually didn't sleep well, had rolled to the side of the bed, and the quilt was rolled into a ball. Ningchen placed the little girl back on the bed, covered her with the quilt, and tucked her in. Then he walked to the side and looked out of the boat through the wooden window. His calm eyes revealed a hint of contemplation. Master Imo was severely injured by the Heaven Speaker, and he probably wouldn't appear in a short period of time. However, this calamity would come sooner or later, and he had to be prepared. The demon body was now imprisoned under the apricot tree, and it was unknown when it would come out. It was very likely that it would be too late to help. In addition, ever since the original body resolved the chaos in the heavens abode, there had been no news of it. Among the three bodies, the original body cultivated 4 heavenly tomes, and its foundation was the strongest. If he could rush back in time and combine the strength of the 2 bodies, he might have a chance to fight Master Imo on equal footing. Thinking of this, Ningchen looked at the little girl who was sleeping soundly. He sighed softly in his heart. Actually, he wanted Yin-Er to stay at the Heaven Speech Peak. Now that his enemies were getting stronger, it would be more dangerous for this girl to stay by his side. He could see that the Heaven Speaker truly wanted to nurture Yin-Er to become the next Heaven Speaker. If he missed such an opportunity, there wouldn't be a second one. If Yin-Er followed him, she might be able to become the next mortal paragon, or reach the peak of the sword realm. However, it was too difficult for her to surpass him. This wasn't a problem of talent but experience. His swordsmanship was honed through battle after battle. This path was difficult and wasn't suitable for Yin-Er. Becoming a Heaven Speaker was actually the most suitable for Yin-Er. He saw the most beautiful side of the world from the fairy-like girl at the Heaven Speech Peak. If Yin-Er stayed at the Heaven Speech Peak, she would surpass him one day. Perhaps it was his misconception, but he clearly felt that after forcefully opening his eyes, there wasn't much vitality left in the Heaven Speaker's body. In this life, he hated owing people favors the most. However, he would never be able to repay the favor of the Heaven Speaker in this life. Outside the riverside, a cool breeze blew. A red light gathered and swept rapidly towards the pleasure boat in the lake. Within the boat, Ningchen came back to his senses. His figure flashed, and he arrived in front of the boat in an instant. With a flip of his hand, he condensed Yuan and blocked the incoming person. With a loud rumble, the lake water soared into the sky and fell down like a waterfall. In the rain, a mirror-like face with the same red clothes and the same calm appearance appeared. Ningchen's expression turned cold. He slowly said, "Vermilion bird." "Phoenix, long time no see," replied the vermilion bird calmly. "Have you come to kill me? I'll accompany you at any time." Ningchen's aura surged, and he didn't hide his killing intent at all. "I didn't come to fight you this time." The vermilion bird waved her hand to stop the battle. Ningchen frowned. "Is there anything else to discuss between us?" "Let's work together," said the vermilion bird seriously. "Oh!" A light flashed through Ningchen's eyes. "What do you mean?" "I know of the ruins of the 4 symbols deities, but it won't be easy to enter. How about we work together?" Ningchen narrowed his eyes. "Why did you come to find me? You should know our fates. In the future, only one of us can exist. As a descendant of the 4 symbols deities, you are the only one I can trust. Phoenix, although we are destined to never be friends, before the heavens make a choice, we might as well try to leave a way out for each other," said the vermilion bird seriously. "I hope your words today come from your heart," Ningchen calmly said. Then he continued, "Tell me, how do we work together? The ruins of the deities I found are blocked by restrictions. Breaking restrictions isn't my specialty, so I came to ask for your help," said the vermilion bird. Hearing this, Ningchen fell silent. After a moment he said, "When?" "In 10 days, I will come to find you again," said the vermilion bird. "Wait," Ningchen calmly replied. "Since there's no problem, then I'll see you in 10 days." The vermilion bird's flames rose, and she turned into a ray of light and flew away. After the vermilion bird left, Ningchen stood on the lake under the moonlight. He looked at the horizon, and a flash of brilliance flashed across his eyes. The vermilion bird's words could be trusted, but not completely. The vermilion bird was a descendant of the four symbols deities. It wasn't strange that she could find the ruins of the other four symbols deities. However, there might be more trouble than expected. After thinking for a moment, Ningchen turned around and walked back to the pleasure boat. As soon as he walked in, he saw the little girl sitting there in a daze. Her little face was full of annoyance from being woken up. "Who is it?" asked Iner in a daze. She was so sleepy that she couldn't open her eyes. "The vermilion bird," said Ningchen calmly. "Huh." Iner's sleepiness suddenly disappeared. She opened her big eyes and asked in confusion, "Why is he here?" "To talk about cooperation," said Ningchen. "It's good enough that you don't fight when you meet. What is there to talk about?" The vermilion bird knows the ruins of the four symbols deities. However, there are restrictions blocking her from entering. She came to find me to join hands to break into the ruins of the four symbols deities, said Ningchen. "Will it be dangerous?" asked Iner worriedly. "It's fine. Aside from the white tiger, the other four symbols deities aren't deities who specialize in killing. There shouldn't be too much danger," said Ningchen. "Oh." Iner nodded and a bright smile appeared on her face. "You can go." "I won't go." Ningchen was slightly surprised. "Why won't you go?" "Don't worry about it. In any case, I won't go." Iner replied and climbed back to her bed to continue sleeping. Ningchen looked at the little girl in confusion. What was she thinking? She was usually so clingy, but this time she was acting out of character. It was said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. It seemed that little girls were the same. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.